Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. We read this one?
Yeah.
Oh, we spoke about hikmah.
Yeah.
So somebody try to translate. If you don't have a draft, just try. Just attempt.
Hikmatu Yusufa, the wisdom of Yusuf. Qala Yusuf Yusufu fi nafsihi. Yusuf kind of spoke to himself, or told himself.
So what do we call that?
Speaking to oneself, or
If you don't vocalize it.
like internal speech.
Okay.
Hajj.
So we can say Joseph internalized the following statement. Or he thought about this. There is an expression called hadith al-nafs in Arabic. Hadith al-nafs. It's self-talk. Self-talk. Yeah.
إن الحجاجة ساقت الرجلين.
إن الحاجة. What did you say?
إن الحاجة ساقت الرجلين. ليه. I'm not sure what hajat and saqat mean, but rajulaini, like indeed, yes.
Al-haja. What does haja mean? Alaykum as-salam. Al-haja is a need or a necessity. You say, احتجت إلى الماء. I was in need of water. So, إن الحاجة, a need, meaning a dire need. ساقت الرجلين إلي. ساقت is something that drives. So it was a severe need that drove these two men to me. To me, إلي. He's talking to himself. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. To Hamza, Munir, and Maryam.
وإن صاحب الحاجة يلين ويخضع. Indeed, the companion.
You don't need indeed
Or
for inna. We can say for sure.
And for sure the dire need of the companion.
No, صاحب الحاجة, that's مضاف and مضاف إليه. The one who has a need. So we had this before. أصحاب الفيل. We didn't say the companions of the elephants. What did we say was صاحب? Sahib is the one that's associated with something. So you guys are called, I can call you Sahibu al-Kitab if I always see you with books. It can mean the owner, but it just means the one that's attached. So here, this is the person with a need, Sahibu al-Haja. So the person with a need, يلين ويخضع. يلين, that's a fi'l. لان يلين, which means to become soft, to become lean. What's lean in English? Does it mean soft?
No.
Skinny. They say lean meat. It doesn't have fat in it, right? Okay, so صاحب الحاجة يلين, it becomes soft وَيَخْضَعْ, and he becomes humbled. When you need something from someone, you don't come to them with arrogance. Because if you come with arrogance, what are they going to say? This guy doesn't need it. But someone who's really in need, they're going to be begging. They're going to be asking for it. They're going to be soft. They're just awaiting for any type of response. That's called desperation. That's what haja is. Desperately in need. So the one who's desperately in need becomes soft and humbled. Okay? Again, all this is self-talk. So when you self-talk, you don't say indeed to yourself. Indeed this and indeed that, right? You're just saying this definitely is the case. Like this is the condition. The condition of someone with a dire need. So when we say that, it's affirming it. The condition, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to add indeed there in English. So the condition of someone who's in desperate need is that he becomes soft and he is humbled. We can also say for yakhda', submissive. Instead of humbled, submissive. Khudu' is our relationship with Allah. That's devotion. You may have heard that you're supposed to perform salah in a state of khudu' and khushu'. How is that typically translated? Concentration and devotion, which is wrong. Khasha'a is to be still, no movement. Khada'a is to be humbled. And that's one of the definitions of the religion of Islam. Al-khudu'u lillahi bil-ta'a. Submission to God with obedience. Because like someone can say, yeah, I submit, but you don't obey. Right? Like the cop tells you, raise your hands. Okay. Get down. No. I'm submitting, right? But I'm not obeying. So here, Yusuf is talking to himself, thinking to himself that this is the condition of this person. This is before he even starts speaking to them. So this is a build-up to how does the wisdom of Joseph manifest itself. So this can actually give us an idea of how can we be wise. Before we talk, we consider things. What's going on? What is this person's situation? Where are we at? What's the environment? What's the circumstance? That is what showcases wisdom. Okay?
Like the one in desperate need, with the
Yuti'. That's a verb. We get the verbal noun ta'a. What's ta'a?
Obedience.
Obedience. So yuti', the one in need, obeys. What? What's yasma'?
Yes, no. To listen.
He listens. Because he's desperate for a response. When you're desperate for a response, your ears are sharp. When you can care less, you don't listen. It's all basically your state. So Joseph is analyzing the state of mind of these two people that came to him. So in our communication with people, we should try to analyze their state of mind. Their emotional state, right? He's talking about emotions too. Lean is soft. Even if somebody is typically harsh, in vulnerable situations, whether they become soft, right? Even if somebody is rebellious, typically, in vulnerable situations, they become submissive. Even if someone doesn't typically listen, vulnerable situations will force them to listen. Everyone is like that. It just depends on how you find them. What condition do you find them in? Okay? فلو. What's فلو? What's لو?
Low is like, it's like or, right? And no, O is like or.
If.
If.
فلو, perhaps.
Perhaps, indeed, right?
Perhaps فلو قلت لهما شيئا.
Perhaps if I say to these two
Good.
something bad or
شيئا. No, just شيئا. Where's bad? Where did you get bad
I
from?
thought shay'an meant bad or kind,
Just something.
something else.
If I say something to them, لهما شيئا. If I say something to these two guys, what would happen?
They would listen.
They would listen.
Both of them would listen.
Yeah.
And I guess they would both listen.
وسمع أهل السجن. What does that mean?
سمع على السجن.
سمع أهل السجن.
And the people of the prison were listening or are listening.
Yeah, so which means that either the inmates or the occupants, whoever is in prison, would listen as well. Because if you're in a small place, it's like me saying, if I talk to Mu'adh, the classroom will listen. If I talk to Mu'adh and Najib, the rest of the class will listen. So if I say anything to these guys, everybody else would also hear. ولكن يوسف لم يستعجل.
But Yusuf,
So لكن is like however.
لم يستعجل.
What does عجل mean? Or عجلة? A lot of these words we've had. I don't know if it's new. It means to be hasty. To do something prematurely. استعجال.
So however Yusuf could not be hasty.
Did not. However, Joseph wasn't too quick. He didn't speak out of line. What does speaking out of line mean? Too early. He's trying to set it up. You know, like when you want to set something up, like, I don't know, in volleyball, they set the ball up, right? It may go back and forth a few times until there's a setup so they can strike. Is that called a strike? I don't know what they call it. When they hit it hard, right? So here, that's what he's trying to do. So لم يستعجل. He's like, look, it's not time yet. I'm waiting for it to get somewhere and then I'll strike. بل قال لهما. Again, this is called the wise person, the wise teacher, the wise preacher. لا تستعجل. Don't be hasty.
He said to both of them.
Rather, he said to them, bel is rather. Rather, he said to both of them,
أنا أخبركما بتأويل الرؤيا.
بتأويل الرؤيا.
بتأويل الرؤيا قبل أن يأتيكما طعامكما فجلس
واطمأن. أنا أخبركما.
Sure.
أخبر. أخبر.
So it's how informed.
Inform. Good.
So I informed both. of them.
So he's talking to them now. He's addressing them. أنا أخبركما. I will inform both of you
About your dreams.
بتأويل الرؤيا. Not about. I will inform both of you the interpretation. تأويل we said is interpretation. We had that in the introduction to the sciences of the Quran. There is a word تأويل and there is a word تفسير. أخبركما بتأويل الرؤيا. And we had تأويل الرؤيا also in the last chapter. And we said that's one of the gifts that prophets are given. It makes sense for them to interpret dreams, considering one of the ways of receiving revelation is dreams. You want to ensure that you understood it.
So I will inform both of you about the interpretation of your dreams. قبل أن يأتيكما طعامكما
قبل.
For the one, or
What's قبل?
I'm not sure.
You don't have to look back. Look at the word itself and try to remember what it means. It's ظرف زمان. You have قبل and you have بعد. What do these words mean? You can pass the baton to Najib.
Before.
طيب, take it over. قبل.
Before your food comes to you, the both of you.
Before your meals come to you. يأتيكما طعامكما. يأتي typically is for humans. That's a word that's used for humans. How is the food going to come to you? So like whenever the food gets served, that's the point. And this is something that they will mention in balagha, that you give a human attribute to something that is inanimate.
Personification.
Somewhat like that. قبل أن يأتيكما طعامكما. So what do they do? How do they respond?
So they sat and rested.
فجلس واطمأن. So basically what he was doing is to tell them, don't rush. I'll let you know. So that's what they want, right? They're interested in knowing what the meaning of that dream is. So he says, I'll let you know the meaning before your meal comes. So he's allowing them to sit down. وَاطْمَأَنَّ, that's when you have peace of mind. اطمئنان. Okay?
ثم قال لهما يوسف and then Joseph said to the both of them, to
Yeah.
them both, أنا عالم بتأويل الرؤيا ذلكما مما علمني ربي ففرحا واطمأنا.
أنا عالم.
And I am knowledgeable of the interpretation of dreams.
Yes. I guess we said yesterday for alim, expert, we can also say specialist. Like that's one of my specialties. Like basically what he's telling them is you guys came to the right person. Right? Like I got what you're looking for. Let's say you come to a store and you're asking for something and you're disrupting and the store and you've been to other stores and like you couldn't find it and he's like, I got exactly what you want, what you're looking for. You feel a sense of peace. Okay? But look what he says. أَنَا عَالِمٌ بِتَأْوِيلِ الرُّؤْيَا. So this is what prophets do. This is how scholars of Islam should be. And anyone who has anything of knowledge in any field should say this. Go ahead.
ذلكما مما علمني ربي. This is what my
من ما علمني ربي.
This is from what I have received.
From. So this is part of علمني ربي. What's علم?
Like taught me.
That is from or of what my Lord and Master has taught me.
Can
Allah-
also be told me, because it's not like a teaching method, like learn this, it's more like this is this.
No, علم is to teach. علم is not to tell.
No, I know it means to teach, but in this case, like was Allah Azza wa Jalla teaching him how to interpret dreams, or was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling him what the dreams meant?
No, Allah gave him the skill, the intuition to interpret dreams. It's a gift. It's a God-given gift. But that's the point, is that you attribute knowledge back to Allah. So Allah says about Adam alayhi salam, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, and He taught Adam the names of all things. How, what was the method of teaching, that's not mentioned. But the point is, Allah is the source of knowledge. Yes?
Why is ذلك in the door? ذلكما.
ذَلِكُمَا, because He's talking to them, both. Meaning, this thing, y'all, like He's addressing them. He could have just said, ذَلِكَ مِمَّا عَلَّمَنِي رَبِّي.
So he's not saying, referring to what has been taught to him. He's referring.
He is, but while adding them. So it's like, this is what my Lord taught me. But then he said, this y'all is what my Lord taught me. He's addressing them. Like before you two, this is what my Lord taught me. Okay? Good that you picked up on that. So that's sometimes that you notice that sometimes it says ذَلِكُمْ or ذَلِكُمَا. So what did he just do? ذَلِكُمَا مِمَّا عَلَّمَنِي رَبِّي. This is called resorting to authority. Because you're like, well, how do I know you're telling me the truth? My Creator and Master taught me this, and you say it with confidence. Basically, I have credentials, the best types of credentials. Okay? وعليكم السلام.
And they both got happy and felt a sense of peace.
Peace, ease. Usually, this is the word that ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. With the mentioning of God, the hearts find tranquility. The itmi'nan is that tranquil state. Of course, it's commonly translated with the remembrance of God, right? It doesn't say في تذكر الله تطمئن القلوب, في ذكر الله. And we said this before, but in order for dhikr to have the best impact, it's got to be done a lot. Allah always talks about ذِكْرُ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا وَالذَّاكِرِينَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. So the number, the amount is what gives an impact. That's very key in dhikr. You got to do a lot of it in order for it to be right. Okay.
وهنا وجد يوسف فرصة فبدا موعظته.
فبدأ موعظته.
And here Joseph
وجد. What's وجد?
faced
Found. Found.
His purpose, فرصة.
No. فرصة is opportunity or chance. So for example, let's say you have a chance to go to Umrah this Ramadan. You're like, عندي فرصة للعمرة. Okay, go. Don't ask me, just go.
When's the next Umrah trip? Just out of curiosity, because I'm planning. I gotta do it, man.
I know they have an Aqsa trip in the summer. I don't know if Umrah is included in that. I didn't check.
I was thinking of going to that,
But the next one I think is, well, there's Hajj. But then after that, I believe it's the Thanksgiving break,
no shot.
which is November. Yeah. I mean, but I'm sure there is others as well. But as far as IOK, if you're asking about IOK, those are the times that I know.
And also, I was planning on one of that, but there's a wedding on the 7th. That's the day they come back.
Mm.
I mean, I could probably come back and still go, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
And what routes are they taking? Are they going to Tel Aviv or are they going to go?
You have to ask Sheikh Ahmed Billo. I don't know.
Oh,
Because he's going, I'm not going.
that's control.
He's been as well, so he has experience, so he knows the different routes. I don't know what route this particular trip will take. Okay. So وجد يوسف الفرصة. Joseph found the opportunity or the chance. That's what I was talking about earlier of what? Set up. So setting up is wisdom. Right? Ensuring that the people are ready to receive what you have to say. If we just reflect over certain things, like some of the events that Muslims have, fundraisers. If the people are not ready to hear you, you shouldn't be talking. Right? Sometimes you keep them hungry. Well, they're too preoccupied being hungry and upset and agitated. Maybe feed them first. But then at the same time, don't take too long because sometimes people eat and also balance, right? So it requires wisdom whenever you address people. Of course, here it's a easier situation in the sense of you're dealing with two people in a confined space, not many distractions. You have to consider that as well. فَبَدَأَ مَوْعِظَتَهُ.
He began his call.
So he began his sermon, you can say. Right?
Can mean multiple things though, right? Like an appointment or...
No, this is موعظة, not موعد.
Oh,
موعظة. موعظة was the title of the last chapter. موعظة السجن, right? وعظة is to admonish. We said wa'adh is to speak in a way that will soften the heart and drive the fear of God into someone to make them fix themselves. So like if I come to you and I speak in a harsh tone but with love, that is the definition of maw'idh. So I would say inni a'idhuka. I'm telling you something heavy right now. Okay, Bismillah. Another maw'idh. Go ahead, ya Kamil.
Who?
Kamil.
موعظة التوحيد. The sermon of...
لا اقرأ. We haven't read this one.
قال يوسف ذلكما مما علمني ربي ولكن الله لا يؤتي علمه كل أحد إن الله لا يؤتي علمه المشرك.
This is so powerful, this chapter. So pay attention.
هل تعرفان لماذا علمني ربي؟ لأني تركت طريق أهل الشرك واتبعت ملة آبائي إبراهيم وإسحاق ويعقوب ما كان لنا أن نشرك بالله من شيء. قال يوسف وهذا التوحيد ليس لنا فقط بل هو للناس جميعا. ذلك من فضل الله علينا وعلى الناس ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون. وهنا وقف يوسف وسألهما تقولون رب البر ورب البحر ورب الرزق ورب المطر، ونحن نقول الله رب العالمين. أأرباب متفرقون خير أم الله الواحد القهار. أين رب البر ورب البحر ورب الرزق ورب المطر؟ أروني ماذا خلقوا من الأرض أم لهم شرك في السماوات. انظروا إلى الأرض وانظروا إلى الإنسان. هذا خلق.
So look, there is a difference between your print and this one. So you انظروا إلى الأرض وإلى السماء. That's something that you guys are missing. So put that. وإلى السماء. وانظروا إلى الإنسان. Yeah. So إلى السماء somehow was dropped. I don't know if there is any political reasons behind this typo. It just dropped.
هذا خلق الله فأروني ماذا خلق الذين من دوني. وكيف رب البر ورب البحر ورب الرزق ورب المطر. أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم. الحكم لله والملك لله والأرض لله الأمر لله. ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه. ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون.
Go ahead, Mu'adh. That's the end, right? Of this chapter. Yeah.
موعظة التوحيد. قال يوسف ذلكنا مما علمني ربي ولكن الله لا يؤتي علمه كل أحد. إن الله لا يؤتي علمه المشرك. هل تعرفان لماذا علمني ربي؟ لأني تركت طريق أهل الشرك واتبعت ملة آبائي إبراهيم وإسحاق ويعقوب. ما كان لنا أن نشرك بالله من شيء. قال يوسف وهذا أنفسنا فقط، بل هو للناس جميعا. ذلك من فضل الله علينا وعلى الناس ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون. وهنا وقفا يوسف وسألهما يقولون رب البر ورب البحر ورب الرزق ورب البحر، ونحن نقول الله رب العالمين. أأرباب متفرقون خير أم الله؟
أميلاه. Why أميلاه?
There's a kasra before.
Good. أميلاه
الواحد القهار. أين رب البر ورب البحر؟
أين رب البر؟
أين رب البر ورب البحر ورب الرزق ورب المطر؟ أروني ماذا خلقوا من الأرض أو لهم شرك في السماوات؟ انظروا إلى الأرض وإلى الأسماء وانظروا إلى الإنس. هذا خلق الله، فأروني ماذا خلق الذين من دونه، وكيف رب البر ورب
البر
وكيف رب
البر
ورب البحر ورب الرزق ورب المطر. أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم.
الحكم لله.
الحكم لله، الملك لله، الأرض لله، الأمر لله. ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه، ذلك الدين القيم، ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون.
هل يمسك الحكم لله ما الحكم الله؟
Where's the alif? How's Allah spelled? Look. Allah is alif, lam, alif, ha. Lillah is lam, ha. Which one do you have there? طيب. Also, al-hukmu. You can't say al-hukmu Allahu. Al-hukmu Allah, because hukum is judgment. But you can say al-hakamu Allahu, the judge. Okay?
موعظة التوحيد. قال يوسف ذلكما مما علمني ربي، ولكن الله لا يؤتي علمه كل أحد، إن الله لا يؤتي علمه المشرك. هل تعرفان لماذا علمني ربي؟ لأني تركت طريق أهل الشرك واتبعت ملة آبائي إبراهيم وإسحاق ويعقوب، ما كان لنا أن نشرك بالله من شيء. قال يوسف وهذا التوحيد ليس لنا فقط، بل هو وللناس جميعا. ذلك من فضل الله علينا وعلى الناس ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون. وهنا وقف يوسف وسألهما يقولون رب البر ورب البحر ورب الرزق ورب البطن ونحن نقول الله رب العالمين أرباب متفرقون خير أم الله الواحد القهار إن رب البر ورب البحر ورب الرزق ورب المطر أروني ماذا خلقوا من الأرض أم لهم شرك في السماوات انظروا إلى الأرض وإلى السماء وانظروا إلى الإنسان هذا خلق الله فأروني ماذا خلق الذين من دونه كيف رب البر ورب البحر ورب الرزق ورب المطر أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم الحكم لله الملك لله الأمر لله الأمر لله ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون.
موعظة التوحيد. التوحيد. What does this word mean?
That's it's vague if you just say monotheism or oneness of God. It embodies a lot more than that.
Yeah, it's not oneness of God.
It's the idea that Allah is the one and only true God.
Yes. One translation, I think they said unicity, not unity, unicity.
What's the difference?
Unity means there is multiplicity of things and then they unite. Like we unite. That's unity. But unicity is just something that is single already.
It's not how Bible goes. The Trinity is unicity. It's
Yes, exactly. That's one problem with that.
Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but it's all one unicity. I think that's even the word they use to describe the Trinity.
Unicity, the fact of being or consisting of one, or being united as a whole. So Tawheed is twofold. We kind of said this before. There is the fact that Allah is one, so that relates to Him being one. But then Tawheed has to do with humans' relationship with Allah. To single Allah out, to single Him alone in devotion. So they call them Tawheed al-Talab, which means there is something that is sought and there is something that's there already. Maw'ilah is, we said, the lecture or a sermon or reminder. And basically, At-Tawheed is what all the messengers of Allah came with. But they did not just come to tell people, hey guys, there is only one God. Because the majority of humanity has believed that. Even polytheists believe there is only one God. So that's not the issue. What is the issue with humanity throughout history?
Associated partners of Allah.
is they refuse to give God His exclusive rights. So that's the second portion of Tawheed. And the prophets came to tell people, you must give God His exclusive rights. And again, that is something that many people are not aware of. They're like, well, we will only bow down to God. Yeah, that's one of His exclusive rights. But He has many exclusive rights. And the most important ones are the ones that people don't typically talk about, like the exclusive right of being the ultimate lawmaker, the exclusive right of being the only one to be obeyed, the exclusive right to set standards of ethics and morality, of justice, and so on and so forth. That's all part and parcel of Tawheed. And that's why people fought the messengers. You think if the messengers just came and told people, hey guys, there's just one God, and just accept that and you're good to go. You think anyone would have rebelled against that? Like, why would anyone rebel against that? The enemies of the messengers recognize that if we are to accept what you're calling to, it's a big deal. It's going to be a paradigm shift. So Yusuf starts with himself, and this is very key with messengers and their followers, is that they're not going to call people to themselves. Rather, they're going to say, you see any good that I have? Where is it from? Allah. That's why he said, ذَلِكُمَا مِمَّا عَلَّمَنِ رَبِّي. He repeats it here again. That's the beginning of this chapter. So directing people's attention to the source of the blessings, not to the blessing manifesting in you. That's the difference between being a caller to Allah and a caller to yourself. It's also a very fine line. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of times people worry about branding. So it's like the brand.
I feel like what you're talking about.
It's marketing. So like a person is more concerned about marketing their name. Yeah, a person is concerned about marketing their name. And what happens when you market is that you're going to compromise on principles. That's just part and parcel of marketing. In order for you to appeal to people's needs, you'll start talking about what people want you to talk about, not what people need. Here, Joseph is put in that situation. What did the people want? Huh? Dream interpretation. What did Joseph do?
When I know something about.
Yeah, no, but he gave them a lecture. That's being called being in charge. I tell people, when you answer questions in da'wah, you're not responsible to answer the question. You're responsible to tell them about Allah. That's what you're responsible to do. So whatever that's going to require, whether you're going to put their question to the side, whether you're going to have to deconstruct their questions because it's coming from a false premise. I wanted to actually share with you something about this topic. I was hoping we would get a chance today, inshallah. But the point is, be in charge of the conversation. ذَلِكُمَا مِمَّا عَلَّمَنِي رَبِّي. Any good that you see with me, its source is my Lord. So the da'iyah, the caller, is humble before their Lord. They don't say, I achieved this because of my research and because of my intellect. We hear this all the time. That, oh, my research led me to this. Yeah, like, why don't you say Allah's hidayah led me to this? You see the difference between the two? Yeah, mashallah, you're very smart. But many people's research will lead them to other results. And in fact, some people who are believers, they are led out of faith. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. May Allah protect us from that. So this is actually, like, I have some conversations with brothers, mashallah, that are extremely brilliant and they're researchers. But sometimes the fear is like, I'm so afraid. I'm like, where is this person going to be in a few years? Because they're so ahead of themselves. And then when you're so smart and other people are dumb, when you're really intelligent and other people are dumb, it becomes dangerous because like you're in a zone of your own. And guess what the shaitan likes more than anything else? Somebody all by themselves. Like when you're in a league of your own, the shaitan just comes to you with some crazy ideas and terrible inspiration. May Allah protect us from that. That's why, again, it's good to be with people. If you have thoughts, run them by other believers and allow them to converse with you. So he starts with this. He says, my source of knowledge, and this is, by the way, very key. The source of knowledge is Allah. The source of all knowledge is Allah. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِعِلْمِهِ وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. All of humanity, they only grasp of His knowledge that which He allows. So all of human findings are things that Allah has allowed, and what He keeps with Himself is more. Allah is the source of knowledge. So when somebody wants to learn, who should they ask first? Allah. Some of the scholars, they said that whenever some difficulty would arise in them coming to a conclusion, they would make a prayer and they say, Ya mu'allima Ibrahim allimni. O you who taught Abraham, teach me. They would beg Allah and they would put their face in the dirt in sajda to humble themselves. They wouldn't say, yeah, I'm just going to research and find it out. I mean, look at the difference between our academic scholarship, and I just mentioned to you, this is some of the greatest minds that ever lived. They would humble themselves, put their face in the dirt, and they say, I would actually go out where no one sees me. They don't do this in public. But I would do that, and I would beg Allah to teach me. And then I would get the answer. And many of us, when we want to look at something, we just go through our own skill set, look at our own resources, and come up with a conclusion and author something. That's a huge difference in attitude even. That's why sometimes results in these articles and these publications don't have barakah in them. Because it wasn't brought by Allah necessarily.
It's such a big claim though to make. It's like even all the things like the technology, because we're in an era of so much innovation, like technological innovation, but most of our quote-unquote technological creations don't even have an original template. Like we're basically like trying to mimic or copy, like for example, they make like clones. Like it's still not any original created format, and they still obviously, they'll acknowledge the fact that yeah, it's not going to be exactly like life.
And it has deficiencies.
It's like, okay, well, if you're so creative, if you're so unique in your thought process, why does it have to have legs and two arms and eyes? And it's like, do something different. It's like everything is based off of an original template. Even like my cousin was telling me, he works at Boeing. He was telling, we were like, before we went to Amman like 2 years ago, he was like looking at the planes and he's like, he's like, everything is based off of like nature. He's like, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah,
looks like a bird.
He's like, the way we design our planes is based off of like the angles of the wingspan of the bird, and like everything is ratioed the same way. The beak, and I'm like, what?
That's a very interesting way of looking at it.
He's like, there's nothing we have, and like the sonar is based off the dolphins. He's like, nothing we have or created is like man-made. He's like, everything is already there.
So what does a believer do when they're involved in stuff like that?
In what kind of stuff? Engineering?
Yes, anything, any field of creativity and innovation.
It depends. They gotta.
What should they do?
Always look back and say, SubhanAllah.
Go back and say, this is from what Allah has taught us. It's not me being such a genius. It's Allah's tawfiq. And that's why they would say, وَمَا تَوْفِيقِي إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ.
And it's such a big claim they make when they say like, oh yeah, God doesn't exist. Well, they say the science. I'm like, and they tell you that we've only discovered not even 1% of what's out there in terms of, the galactical world.
I really wish they would start discovering things that we already have here instead of going out there.
Well, they started with the ocean, but we've only had about less than 5%. So it's like, if we can't even grasp what is here on Earth, like how do you expect to even grasp what's out in space? It doesn't make any sense.
May Allah teach us. Yes, Najib.
I was going to ask, you mentioned the story with these scholars going out into the middle of nowhere and putting their facing the ground. Can you like talk about why they little door rather than in public?
To show their humbleness. Because it's easy to fake humbleness.
So
Like right now, for me to tell you guys, yeah, guys, I'm not clear in teaching, and let me just humble myself here in front of you. When you're all alone with Allah, that's when you showcase your emotions to Allah, and there is no other entity that is there to see you.
And then when you're in public, you show your confidence.
Not necessarily show your confidence. That's not the point, but when we're talking about desperate need, that you want to set up the right environment for yourself, so you're not distracted. So there's no chance of distraction, no chance of showing off. That's the point. And then when you're in front of people, if you don't know, you just say, "I don't know." That's not confidence, is it? That's what they used to say. If they did not know the answer, they would say, "I don't know." They said half of all knowledge is saying, "I don't know." طيب. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُؤْتِي عِلْمَهُ كُلَّ أَحَدٍ. So after he's telling them, all of the things that I have are taught to me by my Lord. However, the one true God, Allah, لَا يُؤْتِي عِلْمَهُ كُلَّ أَحَدٍ, does not give his knowledge to everyone. So his knowledge could mean multiple things. It could mean just general knowledge, or it could mean knowledge of himself. Who receives knowledge of Allah? The prophets, wahy. Right? And wahy comes to people who got to be clean. And that's why he sets up the second sentence. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُؤْتِي عِلْمَهُ الْمُشْرِكَ. God will not give knowledge of himself to a mushrik. What does that mean? That means even if they're exposed to this knowledge, it won't really impact them. And that's why the mushrik who is going to embrace Islam, they have to humble themselves. Basically, the point here is to be an eligible recipient of Allah's knowledge, you have to work on yourself. To be an eligible recipient of Allah's knowledge, you have to work on yourself. Yes?
How would we translate mushrik?
Basic translation is pagan, idolater. That's if they're worshipping some type of idol. One who associates with God. If you want something very accurate, you say one who does not give God his exclusive rights. And because it's the opposite of Tawheed, which is to give God his exclusive rights. Then he says, هل تعرفان لماذا علمني ربي. Do you guys know? Do you realize why my Lord taught me? So he's trying to appeal to them. You guys think I'm special? Let me tell you how I got there. Do you know how I became this? This is the way. لأني تركت طريق أهل الشرك. So the very first thing he did is he destroyed the mushrik. He says, look, this type of info is not granted to people who don't give God his exclusive rights. You know why I achieved this? Because I left the ways of those who associate with God. تركت طريق أهل الشرك. And then this line is so beautiful, and that he mentions his ancestry here. وَاتَّبَعْتُ, and I followed millata, the religion of my fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. مَا كَانَ لَنَا أَن نُشْرِكَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. It was not becoming, it is not becoming for us to associate anyone with God. Min shay means anything. Yes.
You know the concept of like old money that's like been in the family that keeps going.
Yeah.
Could a similar thing apply to the family?
Old faith.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean definitely. Say that again.
Heirloom?
Heirloom?
Heirloom, like heirloom?
I don't know if it's like, would you say that it's something inherited or the fact
Oh,
that
inherited?
his
that's-
lineage is, or are these prophets, the fact that they taught their
Children
correctly, I guess, in a proper manner.
It definitely is an advantage, but not all the children of prophets come out like the prophets.
No, I'm saying the ones that are like it's good. And
That is a huge advantage, no doubt about it. It's very advantageous. And this happens if you study some Islamic history. A lot of families of scholars, they have a line of scholarship. Now that's a double-edged sword, because sometimes what happens is a person inherits what's called mashyakha, scholarship, without being qualified, by the mere fact that he's heir to the family legacy. No qualifications whatsoever other than bloodline. That's not from Islam. That's fake religion. So that's very important to distinguish as well. But if the person follows in the footsteps of their fathers who were upon righteousness and Allah guides them, then that's a huge advantage, of course. That's a huge advantage. And that's clearly a blessing from Allah, because do you get to choose what family you come from? And that's why those people were more grateful to Allah than a typical person would be. They attributed all their blessings to Allah. And that's why he says, how could we associate any partners with Allah? How? He chose us. Huwa astafakum. He has selected you. Qala Yusufu. But look at this. So this is in response to your question. Because somebody may say, oh, so this is just for them elites. You got this lineage, man. We don't even, match. قال يوسف وهذا التوحيد ليس لنا فقط. This message of God's exclusive rights is not exclusive to us. We are not the sole heirs to this. بل هو للناس جميعا. Rather, it is for all of humanity. This also, by the way, destroys the concept of false religion. False religion is very exclusive in the sense of it says, this is only for our group. God's religion is for everyone. Right? So there are certain religious traditions that will not allow you to convert because you're not the right DNA.
In regards to Judaism, if the mom is not Jewish by birth, then the offspring can't be. This is what I've told people.
You're only Jewish in Orthodox Judaism if you have a Jewish mother.
So that's exclusive access.
Definitely. And look who's refuting it. Yusuf. He's one of the tribes. Like, you don't get more Israeli than that. He's the son of Israel. His father is Yaqub, who is also known as Israel. بل هو للناس جميعا.
Could you translate how you translate وَهَذَا التَّوْكِيدُ وَلَيْسَ لَنَا إِطْلَاقًا.
This message of giving God His exclusive rights is not for us only. Is not our exclusive property. Rather, every human has access to it. Every human has access to it. And that's again a huge difference between old money and this. The prophets shared in the wealth that they received from their Lord. People with old money, they don't want to share. They don't want any new people in. It's 10 families that run the banking system and that's it. Nobody's welcome to join. بَلْ هُوَ لِلنَّاسِ جَمِيعًا. It's open access. Equal opportunity. ذَلِكَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا وَعَلَى النَّاسِ. That is from the grace of God upon us and upon people. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. But most people are not grateful. Where's the interpretation of the dream, guys?
It's coming.
Not here yet.
Yeah, he is not going to speak out of line. He set up the conversation, and what he wants is these people's salvation, not for them to salivate over how cute his words are. He could have impressed them with his presentation skills about the dream. But what is the idea that messengers have? Every opportunity, I'm going to target people and direct them to Allah. Every single one. Whenever an opportunity presents itself, I want people to have a chance to salvation. وَهُنَا وَقَفَ يُوسُفُ وَسَأَلَهُمَا. Here, after this intro, Joseph stops. He pauses. وَقَفَ. وَقَفَ could be more than one thing. وَقَفَ like this. He stood. وَقَفَ, he stopped. And وَقَفَ, he paused. So we're talking, he's having a conversation. So when we say وَقَفَ, what does that mean?
He ended.
He paused. He took a break. وَسَأَلَهُمَا. Because he's talking, now he's going to pose a question to them.
So he asked the two of them.
Yes. تَقُولُونَ رَبُّ الْبَرِّ وَرَبُّ الْبَحْرِ وَرَبُّ الرِّزْقِ وَرَبُّ الْمَطَرِ. We covered those in the last lecture, right?
Why does it say taqulun?
You guys say,
Oh, you say.
isn't that what people were worshipping in that society? That's what we had in the last lecture. And not last one, the one before it. موعظة السجن.
These are different gods.
You guys say there is a God of the land and a God of the sea and a God of sustenance and a God of rain. So again, he's doing a comparing contrast. وَنَحْنُ نَقُولُ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. We say, who is we? Who's Joseph talking about? It's only him.
The fathers.
Me and the people I joined. So that's another thing about God's true religion, is you must join something that has been, what? That has been established since Adam. You got to know that. That's your spiritual lineage. نحن نقول الله رب العالمين. We state emphatically that the one true God is the Lord and Master and God of everyone. Then he asks a question. أَأَرْبَابٌ مُتَفَرِّقٌ. Arbab is the plural of Rabb. أَأَرْبَابٌ. Multiple gods that are divided. خَيْرٌ أَمِ اللَّهُ الْوَاحِدُ الْقَهَّارُ. Is that better? Or Allah, the one and the overbearing, or the most powerful, the overwhelming one? What's better? Then again, he's trying to showcase to them the weakness of their gods. أين رب البر? Where are these people? Go ahead, tell me. Where is the God of the land and the God of the sea and the God of sustenance and the God of the rain? أروني, show me ماذا خلقوا من الأرض. What have they created from this land? أم لهم شرك في السماوات? Or do they have a share in the affairs of the heavens? انظروا إلى الأرض. Look around you to the land. وإلى السماء, and to the heavens. وانظروا إلى الإنسان, and look at the humans. So look around you basically. هذا خلق الله. You see all of this that I just directed your attention to? That is the creation of Allah. فَأَرُونِي مَاذَا خَلَقَ الَّذِينَ مِن دُونِهِ. Show me what did those others beside him, below him, made and created. Okay, then he says, so that's the first thing. Where are these gods of yours? Then, وَكَيْفَ? How is there a God of the land, a God of the sea, a God of sustenance, and a God of the rain?
Sounds like Norse mythology.
أَسْمَاءٌ سَمَّيْتُمُوهَا. It's simply names that you came up with and you made. Mythology. That's all it is. You and your forefathers. You guys came up with this. This is completely human-made.
Sheikh Yusuf was before Dawood Hussein?
Yeah, before.
Before?
Before Musa alayhi salam. This is in the very beginning.
Oh.
Because his father is Israel, so there were no Bani Israel yet.
Sheikh, what is Sammaytuha?
Sammaytumuha, you have named them. You have labeled them. Names that you have come up with, you and your forefathers. Then he tells you what Tawheed is. So you know how we said Maw'idat al-Tawheed? This is what Tawheed is. Al-Hukmu Lillah. Judgment is for Allah. Al-Mulku Lillah. Governance is for Allah. Al-Ardu Lillah. All of the land is for Allah. Al-Amru Lillah. The command is for Allah. When we say Lillah here, it's like Alhamdulillah. What does it mean? Not just for. Yeah, more.
It's only
Solely, exclusively. When we say Alhamdulillah, we say all praise is exclusively due to Allah. So these things are exclusively to Allah. Then he says to them, so he addresses that, then he says, أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّهُ. You are not to serve anyone except for him. تَعْبُدُوا تُطِيعُوا. You're not to obey anyone but him. You're not to be devoted to anyone but him. We spoke about ibadah at length before. ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ. That is the upright way to God. So if we say there is a deen al-qayyim, that means there is a crooked religion. There is one correct religion and everything else is false. Deen al-haq wa deen al-batil. Deen al-qayyim wa deen al-mi'waj. Mi'waj is crooked. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. But most people don't know. Most people don't know. May Allah make us of those who know. Anyway, so this is something very brief, very short. It captures the essence of the message of the prophets. Yes, Najib.
I find إِلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ, the way it was translated, interesting, because it seems like not PC, I guess, or like it seems like kind of like you are not to worship anyone but him. If
Yes.
someone is making da'wah and it's called is to like the person they were giving the da'wah to.
Yeah.
I'm not like it's for sure correct, but it's just interesting.
It's different than what we've been hearing. So again, the point here is look at the difference between how the prophets address their people and how we are addressing our people. Compare and contrast. Who were the experts in calling people to Allah? Who had the best empathy and truly cared about people? We're not going to care more about people than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah guide us. Yes. أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُ. So a lot of the ayats that are taken here are taken from Surah Yusuf. Inshallah we'll continue. Tomorrow we're going to translate, I guess. We'll translate the rest of the tafsir book. And maybe I'll share with you guys the da'wah exchange that I had online. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.
What do you guys do after work? What do you guys do after work?
I think I was like maybe something else, or message with this one. It's not too much, but and the amount of movie notes in and a lot of lessons. But I didn't take notes for class. It shouldn't be too much.
haven't seen them. I had a question about the Palestine trip. You guys landed in Tel Aviv?
So we used to, when I used to take groups, we used to do Jordan
Through Jordan?
and then go over the bridge.
Bus?
Uh,
Which bridge? Like Hussein?
yes. But it was just like, it's like the same thing. Like, it's the same, it's just more of a hassle if you land in Jordan.
It is, because you gotta take a bus and you have to go through
Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, look, I'm being. So, what it seems like in the past is that people were avoiding Tel Aviv airport, right? But at the end of the day, like, you have to, if you don't, you still have to go at the border at, when you.
You have to go through some form of customs, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, like. So I know, like, a few years ago, a few groups tried going through Tel Aviv and they were fine.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, now they just go through Tel Aviv.
And then the route that you guys take is
LA, Istanbul, Tel Aviv.
Air
Turkey.
Turkey.
I mean, it's not called, it's Turkish Airlines.
Turkish
Just to be more precise.
What do you guys do there?
Huh?
What do you guys do just go like stuff
What are we doing with that? So usually, in the days, in the like during the day part of it, we have. Give me a second. In the day part of the trip, we usually have tours. Like sometimes they like include bus. Like you go to what's called the Al Khalil, that area. You go to Bethlehem and other places. And then one of the days, like, is a walking tour of the Aqsa compound, which is like, much more than that. Like, and you know, the Christian quarters, the Jewish quarters, all that stuff, right? So they have a guide for that. And then usually in the evenings between Maghrib and Isha we do halaqa. Yeah.
I want to go. The only thing is like there's a wedding on the 7th, and it's like obviously at night. And I'm like, okay, maybe by
Is
the
the
time-
7th Sunday?
Yeah, on Sunday at night. I feel like as a normal wedding would be. So my question is do we land during the day, or do we land late at night on Sunday?
What time is the wedding?
The wedding is probably 6:30, 7 p.m.
The flight from Turkish Airlines lands at. It doesn't land. Give me a second. At the max, it lands at 5, but I want to say it lands at 4 something.
That's fine. Like I'll have enough energy to go to a wedding.
Like I know because this is the flight we take. I want to say it lands at 4. It doesn't land at 6. I know that for sure.
Okay, that's fine. But how much is it going for? We should.
I don't know. It's the website.
Oh, you don't know yet?
No. I mean, it's on the website. I don't. Like,
Oh, the website is that linked to the post?
yeah.
Yeah, I'll check.
How long is
I want to go.
Huh?
How long is it?
So not go.
It's like a Sunday to Sunday.
Sunday to Sunday?
My way, I haven't been home, like back home yet. My family told me to go. Because they fall out on that. I went to visit family.
What'd you say?
I said if I were to go, like I haven't gone to visit family yet. They would like tell me. It's what's wrong with me.
So just go visit them when you're there. Just tell them, hey, I'm at this place, they'll push you well.
Yeah, go with the group.
Is it a problem to leave the group?
Someone asked me that.
'Cause, I don't have any plans, I'm just asking for the Jeep.
No, it's not that.
Like if he wants to see, like, let's say he'll see his family.
After like week
After
or
Monday
two.
for like dinner, you know? Like Sahara or something.
Yeah, I would advise he doesn't like while the group is there. He doesn't leave. Go to the village.
You could take the bus for 30 minutes. Like,
you said that he doesn't leave the village.
that he doesn't go to. Salam. Quiz 10 and 11. That's what I don't have. Yeah, that's what I don't have for you. I couldn't find it. Do you remember taking those? So,
Last two, I think. These are the last two. Right?
yeah. Well, 11 you took, but then we...
Yeah.
So 10 and 11. So whenever you're ready to take those, just go to Sister Sarah and tell her to print out quiz 10 for you, to print out quiz 11. Take them, do them whenever. I mean, obviously some point, you know, before.
The school ends?
Yeah. Actually, before, by next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
By next Wednesday. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. Take out your fiqh packets. We're on page 43, prostration of recital, sajdat al-tilawa. Okay, sujood al-tilawa or sajdat al-tilawa. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he narrates that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا سَجَدَ ibn Adam, that if the son of Adam recites a verse of prostration, or إذا قرأ ابن آدم آية سجدة وسجد, and he does sajda, then اعتزل الشيطان, that shaitan, he like departs or runs away, and he cries and he says, Ya waylah, like oh woe to me, or like destruction to me. Umira ibn Adam bis-sujud fasajad falahu al-jannah. Shaitan, he begins to cry and he runs away, and he says that the child of Adam was ordered to prostrate, and he did so. Falahu al-jannah, so to him belongs, or for him is paradise. Wa umirtu bis-sujud wa abayt, and I was ordered to prostrate and I disobeyed. Fali ad-nar, so for me is the hellfire. The number of prostrations, or the number of verses of prostration in the Quran, is something that there is difference of opinion about, right? You could say that the majority are agreed upon, but there are few that there is a difference of opinion on. So, according to the Hanafis, there are 14 prostrations of recital in the Quran. Once again, there are 14, and they are listed there. Just quickly, I'll read the surah numbers, and then we'll talk about some of the differences. Surah Al-A'raf, verse 206. Surah Al-Ra'd, verse 15. Surah Al-Nahl, verse 50. Surah Al-Isra, 109. Surah Maryam, verse 50. Surah Al-Hajj, verse number 18, right? And then it says next to it, disagreement on the second. So there are two verses of prostration in Surah Al-Hajj. The Hanafis only consider the first one, right? The Hanafis don't consider the second one, and we'll talk about that second one in a second. Surah Al-Furqan, verse number 60. Surah Al-Naml, verse 25. Surah Al-Sajdah, verse 15. Surah Al-Sad, verse 24. Surah Fussilat, verse 38. Surah Al-Najm, verse 62. It says Maliki next to that. We'll talk about that. Surah Al-Inshiqaq, verse 21, which is the last verse. No, sorry, it's not the last verse. It's towards the end. Also, it says Maliki. We'll talk about that. And then number 14, Surah Al-Alaq, the last verse. All right? These are the 14 verses that the Hanafis say that if you recite them, that you have to perform prostration, and we'll talk about the ruling of this prostration of recital as well, right? According to the different madhab. But these are the 14. Some of the scholars, they say they're actually 15, right? Because there's a narration that is attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where I believe it's Amr bin As radiyallahu anhu, he says that the Prophet ﷺ told him or recited to him that there were 15 verses that have prostration in them, right? Okay, let's see where we should start. Okay, so for example, the second prostration in Surah Al-Hajj, right, which is on the last page, right? The Hanafis don't consider that an ayah of prostration. Other scholars, they do consider that an ayah of prostration. That's one of the ways that you get 15. Is that clear? So 14, you add one, it's 15. Is that one there? The prostration in Surah Al-Sad, which is listed as number 10, Imam al-Shafi'i did not believe that was a verse of prostration, right? And then for the three other ones at the end, Surah Al-Najm, Surah Al-Inshiqaq, and Surah Al-Alaq, right? Imam Malik did not believe those three were verses of prostration. Rather, it was his opinion that those last three, they used to be verses of prostration, but then they became mansukh. They become abrogated. Like, not the verses became abrogated, but the act of doing prostration when reciting those verses became abrogated specifically to those, because of a hadith of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, where he mentions that the Prophet ﷺ did not perform prostration in any of the surahs that are called Surah Al-Mufassal. There's, the short ones, right? Which basically start from roughly Hujurat till the end. Surah Al-Hujurat till the end, to Nas, right? And even from Hujurat to Nas, Hujurat is in the 26th juz towards the end, all the way to Surah Nas, the majority said there are three verses of prostration, which are Surah Al-Najm, Surah Al-Inshiqaq, and Surah Al-Alaq, right? Imam Malik said these are not verses of prostration. They used to be, but the ruling is now abrogated. The verses are still there, but the ruling of prostrating after reciting them is abrogated because of a hadith of Ibn Abbas, where Ibn Abbas, he said that the Prophet ﷺ did not prostrate in any of the surahs that are considered mufassal after he migrated to Medina. Right? So this is the proof that Imam Malik used. Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, who's a Shafi'i, he says that this is a weak opinion because there's an authentic hadith in Sahih Muslim narrated from Abu Hurairah, who says that we prostrated with the Prophet ﷺ in the following surahs, إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انشَقَّتْ and اقرأ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ, right? And this narration specifically from Abu Hurairah, the majority uses it as a proof that there are prostrations. Why is this narration? Why would we take this narration over the narration of Ibn Abbas? So Ibn Abbas, he says that the Prophet ﷺ did not prostrate in any of the surah al-Mufassal, those end surahs from Hujurat al-Nas, after moving to Medina. Okay? Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he says that we prostrated with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in these two surahs, إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انشَقَّتْ and اقرأ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ.
Abu
I will take Ibn Abbas.
He became a Muslim in Medina.
Huh?
I'll take
Exactly.
Ibn Abbas.
Medina, right?
So they say that Abu Hurairah's Islam is only
2 years.
in Medina,
Yeah, well,
right? About 3 years, right? That's when he joins the Prophet ﷺ. So he says, if Abu Hurairah says, Sajadna ma'a Rasulillah ﷺ, that we prostrated with the Prophet ﷺ, he's obviously talking about
Madani time.
Madani time, right? So that's very clearly, right, that the verses of prostration were not abrogated. So that's what the majority of scholars use to prove that there is prostration at the end of those three.
But was Ibn Abbas's statement really leading to an abrogation? I mean, it was just saying that you do not prostrate in Mecca to these.
He just says we did not prostrate in any of the Mufassal since the time of Prophet ﷺ migrating to Medina.
Yes, but that's
But he was a young son.
in my well, I mean,
So these are all reasons why the scholars took the narration of Abu Hurairah, right?
why? Because Ibn Abbas was young.
I mean,
Yeah, but that's the same thing you can make against fasting Ashura, because the Shibri say the same thing.
but I'm saying when they look at the generality that there are like it's not just he's young, like that's just a factor, but that's not the determining factor.
Yeah, yes,
Right.
blessing. It's just like saying
But there's a number of factors. One is Abu Hurairah is narrating Abu Hurairah specifically narrating him prostrating in Medina, right? Even without explicitly saying Medina, there's consensus among the scholars that Abu Hurairah accepted Islam towards those later years, right, of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. So he's explicitly stating that we prostrated with the Prophet ﷺ in specifically إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انشَقَّتْ and اقرأ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ. So it's very it's very, very clear, it's very, very definitive about what he's saying, right? As opposed to the narration of Ibn Abbas, it's a little vague, right? He just says we didn't prostrate in Surah al-Mufassal, right? Perhaps he wasn't there, perhaps they did, but he just wasn't, you know what I'm saying? When Prophet ﷺ read those specific verses. But Abu Hurairah's narration is very, very specific. That we prostrated in إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انشَقَّتْ and we prostrated in اقرأ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ. Now both Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik did not see that second prostration in Surah Al-Hajj as a verse of prostration, both of them.
Why?
Huh?
Why? It's very clear.
It's not very, I wouldn't say it's very clear.
Well, it's in order.
But they have different evidences that all of them use to prove, right, the different whether it's a verse of prostration or it's not a verse of prostration, right? Imam al-Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad, they use a hadith where it's mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ, he says Ya Rasul, a companion says to the Prophet ﷺ, O Messenger of Allah, like I prefer Surah Al-Hajj بِأَنَّ فِيهِمَا سَجْدَتَيْن, because in both of them in them is two prostrations. So a companion, he comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, O Messenger of Allah, like I have this liking towards Surah Al-Hajj, and then he explains, he says, because in them is two prostrations. And the Prophet ﷺ says, نعم ومن لم يسجدهما فلا يقرأهما. The Prophet ﷺ says, that whoever is not going to prostrate for those 2 verses, then let them not recite those 2 verses. Right?
Oh, that's very clear.
Obviously, I could tell you right off the bat that Imam Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa, for whatever reason, they do not accept that hadith, right? They obviously would not, if they accepted the hadith, they would not turn it away. They would say that then they do have prostration in those verses. Okay, the ruling of sajdat al-tilawa. According to the Hanafis, the sajda is wajib on the reciter and the listener, whether the listener intended to hear it or not. Right? And this is based on the verse, they base this on the verse in Surah Al-Sajda, where Allah says, only those who believe in our signs, who when they are recited to them fall down in prostration and celebrate the praise of their Lord, and they are not proud. Now the cause would be reciting or hearing one of the 14 verses. That being said, the majority of scholars, besides the Hanafis, they hold it to be a emphasized sunnah, but not a wajib. Right? Now the difference here would be that the Hanafis, they say it's a wajib, meaning if you leave it, you are sinful and liable and deserving of punishment. Emphasize sunnah, that you should do it. If you do it, you will gain immense reward. If you don't do it, then you're not sinful. Right? That being said, like the reality of the situation is kind of the same, that a person should do it. There's no reason that they shouldn't do it. A few issues related to sujood tilawa. If the imam recites a verse that has a prostration in prayer, right? So in this case, the person praying behind him, who's called the ma'moom, right, would prostrate with the imam, technically whether they heard the imam or not, and whether the recital was loud or silent, right? Now, obviously, if you heard the imam recite a verse and he went straight into prostration, you're going to follow him, right? But technically, for whatever reason, right, if the imam recited a verse of prostration in Dhuhr and Asr, right, and he went into prostration, you would follow him, right? Obviously, it wouldn't be the smartest thing for the imam to do at all, right? But from a technical perspective, if he did, you would follow him. Now, according to the Hanafis, in Salah, it can be done in one of 2 ways. Right? It can either be done by going straight into ruku'. What do I mean by that? The person recites the verse of prostration, right? Now, I'll tell you the way you usually see it practiced. The imam recites a verse of prostration, he goes into prostration, he comes back up, recites a few verses, or finishes whatever he wanted to recite, and then goes into ruku'. Clear? That's usually the way you see it, and that's fine, right? But there are other ways of doing it. According to the Hanafis, and it seems like this is specific to the Hanafis, they say that it can be done by going into ruku'. Right? What do they mean by this? That let's say you finish reciting Surah Al-Alaq, right? Immediately after you finish reciting the verse, the person goes into ruku'. Right? No, not sujood, ruku', right? And they have to have the intention. They have to have the intention that they're basically prostrating for this verse, right? So if they continue, right, then that ruku' would not count as their sujood tilawa. They would have to do it out of prayer. Does that make sense? If they continued reciting. But if they stop at that verse, right, and they go into ruku', right, that would count. At that point, they're just continuing their prayer. They get back up from ruku', go into their 2 sujood, right? But that's one of the ways to do it. The other way to do it is to do a regular sajda immediately, right? to do a regular sajda immediately in the way I described, right? That you go straight down. Does that make sense?
You just continue the prayer from there.
So you go straight down,
And then you get
you
back.
go straight, you get back up, and then you recite and you go back to ruku, right? Or you do an extra sujood. How would you do an extra sujood? Let's hypothetically say that you recited the verse of prostration, and then you recited a few more verses after it, right? You go into ruku', you get out of ruku', then you would basically do 3 sujood. You do 3 sujood. 2 for the rak'ah and 1 for the prostration of recital. Is that clear? Right? Now, like I said, the common way that you see it is the imam goes straight into sajda, gets back up, recites a few verses, and then goes into ruku', right? Now, from a technical perspective, even if the imam went straight into sajda and he got back up, right? And then he went into ruku' without reciting any additional verses, it's fine. Does that make sense?
You need takbir for that?
For what?
For that, you're going straight to sujood,
Yes.
then back up.
If you're leading people, yes. Yeah, even if you're not leading people, yes.
Being in the takbir again for going to
Yes. Right? So, but the thing about going straight into ruku' and that counting as your basically kind of prostration as recital seems to be something that is specific to the Hanafis.
So in that
Ho-
case,
But do you guys get all the different ways that it can be done? Right? So one is that basically you end Suratul Alaq, right? You end and you go straight into ruku', right? That ruku' will count as your ruku' of the prayer, and it will also count as kind of a type of prostration of recital. Then you get back up and you perform your 2 sujood. That's one way. The other way is that after you recite it, you go straight into sujood, right? Then you get back up. After you get back up, you can recite more verses, or you can go straight into ruku'. Clear? Now, this is where you have a slight difference of opinion, because the Hanafis give you the option of going into ruku' after you recite the verse, right? Generally, you won't find them say, hey, go into sujood, get back up, and then go into ruku' without reciting anything. They would have said you just should have gone into ruku', right? But the others, they don't have this ruku' option, so they say go into sujood, get out of sujood. If you don't recite anything, it's fine, then you go into ruku'. Although some scholars seem to say that it's better to recite something after going into the prostration, just to kind of like, so that the prayer doesn't look weird, right? Go ahead, you had a question?
answer.
Huh?
You answered it.
I answered it? Okay. You had a question?
Yeah, for the first one, so essentially it's just like the second one. When you do it with the ruku, it'd be from an outsider to look the same.
From an outsider, it would look exact the same. You wouldn't be able to tell. There would, the shape of the salah, the surah of the salah would look exactly the same. Okay. Now, if a verse, also note this, right? If the verse of prostration is recited in prayer, it doesn't mean it has to be prostrated for at that point in time. Clear? So even, let's say hypothetically, the imam takes the Hanafi opinion that it's wajib to do, right? Or it takes the Sunnah opinion. And the imam recites a verse of prostration and keeps going. And he doesn't do the prostration in salah. It doesn't have to be done in salah, right? It's regularly done in salah because it was just recited then. Everyone's in a state of purity, everyone's in a state of tahara, they're all facing the qibla, might as well do it, right? But it doesn't have to be done in prayer. Now, if a verse of prostration is recited before prayer, then one's prostration for it within prayer is enough, but the opposite is not true, right? So basically, if one is reviewing, I'm just going to once again use Suratul Alaq as an example. One is recite Suratul Alaq, right before prayer. They recite the verse of prostration, and then they get up to pray a prayer, not to perform sajda, but they get up to pray a prayer, right? Their normal prostration within prayer, right, would count for the sajdatul tilawah, as long as they have the intention for it. They can't like after they finish praying, they're like, oh God, I gotta do sujood tilawah. You know what? I prostrated in my prayer. I'm gonna make that also. You can't.
But does that negate the arkan? Not the arkan. Yeah, what the arkans of salah and sujood? Like, would that negate that because it's fard to do?
No. So you have like, hey, this prostration I want it also to be my prostration.
Oh.
Yeah. So we said then one's prostration for it within prayer is enough, but the opposite is not true.
So if you recite it afterwards,
Yeah,
then you gotta do it.
basically, if you recite it afterwards and then you try to like be like I did prostration, you can't, right? You can't go backwards as we described.
Limitations.
Huh?
Wait till, say this is the hood. Could you wait like till Asr?
Yeah, you can wait, right? You can wait. Generally, scholars recommend doing it if possible right away, right? But technically, can you wait, right? There's not a time restriction here, right? But it is something, according to Hanafis, that is wajib upon you, right? So they're a little more strict, or a little more like saying that, hey, as soon as that time permits itself, you should do it right away. The next thing is that some other issues. One sajda is enough for multiple recitations as long as one is in the same sitting. Again, one sajda is enough for multiple recitations as long as one is in the same sitting, right? So this is an example. Let's say you're reviewing Surah Al-Najm, right? So you're reading the verse over and over and over again, right? One sajda would be enough. It is not wajib if it is something that you hear on the radio, on TV, right? It's only wajib for live recitations. And then don't do it in silent prayers. This is like specific kind of to the imam, right? Don't do it in.
Don't recite that.
Yeah, because it confuses the people.
Sheikh, do we have to make up this sujood that we missed in our lives?
If you take the opinion that it's wajib, yes.
Based off the hadith, I would say it is.
Huh?
Based off the hadith, I would say it is.
Based on.
The one about shaitan running. Running Muslim.
There's no command in there.
I mean, we don't want to miss out on that.
Without a doubt, you wouldn't want to miss out on that, right? Because that's why they said it's to emphasize sunnah, right? But we said that the majority doesn't have this category of they don't have this category general of wajib. They have fard and sunnah, right? And they say fard are very, very clear, right? That they're established through a definitive proof. Anything that's speculative, they're not gonna obligate it upon the person.
Not true. Like, from what I learned, that like the difference between fard and wajib is like, for at least my shaykh saying, if it's wajib, consider it fard. Like fard and wajib get interchanged.
Yes, within the madhab, because there is no actual wajib. So they use fard and wajib linguistically the same. Fard means obligation, wajib means obligation. So they use them interchangeably, right? The other madhab. They'll say something is fard, they'll say something is wajib. They mean the same exact thing, right? But they're always things that have been established through a definitive proof. Right? As opposed to the Hanafis, they have this category of between fard and wajib. That's why the word wajib means something very, very different for them.
Just to review, wajib is something that's but it's proven by definitive.
Speculative.
I thought it was definitive in authenticity, but speculative in text.
Okay, so yeah, to be very, very particular, right? It's usually definitive in its chain of narrations, but speculative in its meaning. Right? generally, but it can be the other categories as well. How to perform it? How to perform it? This is generally like if you're outside of prayer, right? To make takbir, to make sajda, and then to do takbir again while rising from the sajda and not doing any taslim. You don't have to say assalamu alaikum to your right, you know, right? Just making a takbir, right? Even if you're sitting, right? Making a takbir to go into the prostration and then making a takbir to get out of the prostration, right? Whether you get back up sitting or you get back up standing, either is fine. You don't have to make a salams.
Can you just say anything in the session?
We'll get to that. You don't have to raise your hands, right? There's no tashahhud, there's no taslim. It is recommended according to the Hanafis to stand before, right? It is recommended to stand before, but once again, you don't have to. What was I going to mention? Yes. You can recite Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, right? Just 3 times, right? Or some scholars have said that you can recite, there's a sajada wajhi lilladhi khalaqa, that my face has prostrated to the one that created it, wasawwara, and that like formed it and fashioned it, washaqqa sam'ahu wa basara, and that gave it the ability to hear and to see. Then some narrations say immediately after that, فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. The one you're looking at, it has بِحَوْلِهِ وَقُوَّتِهِ, like with his might and with his power, right? So, like I said, you can say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la 3 times, which would be fine, or you can say this dua that other scholars have mentioned, سَجَدَ وَجْهِي لِلَّذِي خَلَقَهُ وَسَوَّرَهُ, that my face is prostrated to the one that created it and fashioned it or shaped it, وَشَقَّ سَمْعَهُ وَبَصَرَهُ, and gave it the ability to hear and to see, بِحَوْلِهِ وَقُدْرَتِهِ, with his power and with his might. فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators.
So isn't there another one that has the name Dawood in it?
It has
Dawood?
Dawood.
Yeah.
Perhaps there is, but it's not like, I mean, this is the one you find very, very commonly when they talk about what is to be prostrated for. Okay. Sorry, going back to, so we talked about the difference of opinion of the ruling itself, right? Hanafi say it's wajib, the other say it's an emphasized sunnah, right? Now you can write this down. The Hanafis, they say, how many verses of prostration for the Hanafis? 14. The Shafi'is also say 14. Right? So what do? They add the one in Surah Al-Sajdah. They add They add the second one in Surah Al-Hajj, right? And they remove the one in Surah Al-Sad. Right? That's how they get 14. Once again, they add the one in Surah Al-Hajj, the second one, right? And then they remove the one in Surah Al-Sad. And the Hanabila, may Allah preserve the Hanabila upon the truth all the time, mashallah, they say they are 15. They're 15, all of them, right? So all of the ones the Hanafi said, plus but to be specific, because Shafi'i eliminated Sad, right? So yeah, the one he added, right? So the 14 the Hanafi said, plus the second one in Surah Al-Hajj. And the Malikis say there are, you wanna? Do the math.
Well, it's -3, so it's just going to be 11.
It's going to be 11 because they don't count the second one in Hajj to begin with. So they're at 14 and then they eliminate the last 3, right? So they're at 11. And all of them, rahimahullah, have their proofs. Any questions about that?
Saying is not mandatory. You can just do sajda and you're good.
Say it again.
You can just do the takbirah.
Do the takbir, go to prostration, and get out of the takbir. Get out.
I have a question, but it's related to such a
It's related to sujood sahwi. Okay.
It says when to perform it remaining seated after tashahhud,
At-tashahhud.
the amount of time it takes to say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. I just wanted to get clarification on that.
So that was going over specific issues when you would perform sujood sahwi, right? So that issue, if I remember correctly, it's talking about that. Let's say you're sitting in your first tashahhud, right? And you recite at-tahiyyatu lillahi salatu wa tayyibat. After that, mistakenly you think this is my final sitting, so you begin to recite Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, right? And then you realize after reciting that, or not reciting that but just kind of sitting silently, you realize, oh, this is my first tashahhud. So then you get back, now you get up for your third rak'ah, right? If you sat for that period of time, right? Regardless if you said Allahumma salli ala Muhammad till the end, but if you sat for the period of time that it takes to say that, then you would have to perform sujood sahwi, right? Why? Because you delayed a rukn. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
What are the conditions for the sajda?
What are the conditions for the sujood tilawah? The majority of scholars, including the four madhahib, they say that the conditions for sujood tilawah are the same conditions for prayer. That you have to face the qibla, you have to be in a state of tahara, that the awrah has to be covered, so on and so forth, right? A minority says no, that you do not have to be in a state of tahara, and that's the big one. That's the big one, to be honest. The reason for this is those that say you have to be, including the four madhahib, that you have to be in a state of tahara and so on and so forth, they compare that sajda by itself to salah. They say it's similar to salah. Okay? The minority who say you do not have to be in a state of tahara, they say it is not salah, rather it is a prostration by itself. You cannot compare it to salah. Right? That's kind of the crux of the matter. Right? But the majority say that you have to, all of that stuff, right? You have to be facing the qibla, and you have to.
Well, how would you be reading? Well, it depends. Again, in order to hold mushaf.
Let's say you're reading from a phone.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
There's ways to do it. Let's say you're reading from memory. Right. That's what you were asking, right?
Sajda to shukr, you don't have to have the preconditions, right?
Sajda to shukr is a little different, right? I believe according to most here, you don't have to have the conditions.
And it is from the sunnah, yeah?
Yes. Shukr is from the sunnah, right? For example, the Prophet ﷺ, when he sent some of the companions to go preach to another tribe, and they came back telling him, or he got the news that they accepted Islam, right? The narration says, فَخَرَّ سَاجِدًا, he immediately fell into prostration. Or in the famous story of the companion Ka'b ibn Malik, who did not participate in the battle of in Tabuk, right? And because of that, out of his own shortcomings, and then out of that he was boycotted or excommunicated from the community for a number of days until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed his forgiveness, right? And Ka'b ibn Malik himself, he says that specific day that his forgiveness came down, he prayed Fajr on his roof, right? And then he heard people coming out of the masjid yelling, Abshir, have glad tidings, O Ka'b, right? So Ka'b says the first thing that he did was he fell into prostration, right? So without a doubt, sujood shukr is a sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that has kind of been lost or neglected, right? And the purpose of it is just attributing whatever blessing it is or whatever glad tidings you're receiving, attributing it to Allah and thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. Anything else regarding that? Okay, then let's quickly move to lesson 8. Lesson 8, we're now talking about Salatul Jumu'ah. So we begin by saying the virtues of Salatul Jumu'ah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, يا أيها الذين آمنوا O you who believe إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. That O you who have believed, when the call to prayer is made on the day of Friday, hurry towards the reminder of God and leave off your trading, that is better for you if only you knew. And because of this verse, the majority of scholars, they say that once the call of Jumu'ah has been made, right, and this is a little even more specific to like places where you heard the adhan, right? Let's say any transactions that happen after it are not valid transactions, right? Because now it's time. This is for those that it's obligated to pray Salatul Jumu'ah, like an adult male Muslim, right? It's not a valid transaction.
What do you mean by valid transaction?
I could take it back.
Huh?
I could take it back. Whatever.
Well, you engaged in it, so
Meaning there's no barakah to the transaction.
there's no barakah to the transaction,
That's
right?
what I meant.
Yeah.
What do we know that Shema has been initiated? Like what kind of signals that?
The adhan that before the imam says Assalamu alaikum. Or right, sorry. When the imam says Assalamu alaikum, the adhan.
Okay, so that.
Yeah. The first adhan that comes before that is, obviously it used to be practiced differently during the time of the companions. The first adhan was instituted by, I don't know. We have this concept of two adhans in Jummah, yes? Right. The first adhan was instituted by Uthman ibn Affan, right, to basically inform the people that the time of Jumu'ah is coming, like it's very, very close. Clear? And then after that there was a time period, right? That was most likely longer than the time period that now we have between the two adhans. Right? Sometimes now the time between two adhans might be 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
I should have a question. When you're saying Jumu'ah, is there a sukun on the meme or
No.
a dhamma?
There's a dhamma.
Oh, Jumu'ah.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة. جمعة but جمعة. يوم الجمعة. Obviously many people sometimes you hear Jum'ah, right? It's Jumu'ah. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said about the day of Friday, خير يوم طلعت عليه الشمس يوم الجمعة فيه خلق آدم وفيه أدخل الجنة وفيه أخرج منها ولا تقوم الساعة إلا في يوم الجمعة. A number of things that are associated with the day of Friday. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that the best day upon which the sun has risen is the day of Friday, or the day of Jumu'ah. Adam was born on this day and he entered paradise on this day, and he was expelled from paradise on this day, and the hour will not be established, meaning the day of judgment, except on this day. Right? There's another hadith that's attributed to Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu, where he says the Prophet ﷺ would say, لَيْلَةُ الْجُمُعَةِ غُرَّاء يَوْمُهَا وَيَوْمُهَا أَزْهَرُ, that the evening of Jumu'ah is illuminated and the day is shining and beautiful. The evening of Jumu'ah refers to what we would call Thursday night. Right? So we're clear on that? That is, Maghrib, right? Friday night would be Laylatul Sabt, right? It would be the night of Saturday. Now generally on the day of Friday, believers, regardless of gender, are encouraged to increase in their acts of worship, right? It has been called, it has been given to us as an Eid for us, right? So it is our weekly Eid. And the Prophet ﷺ, he would recite specific surahs on Fridays, and it means we're having our sins of the week forgiven, right? So for example, one of the sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ was that in the Fajr on Jumu'ah, he would recite, anyone know? Surah Al-Insan would be in the second rak'ah, and the first rak'ah would be?
The longer surah, right?
Yeah.
Is it Yasin or Yusuf?
No, Surah Yusuf is long. It'll be a long Fajr. Long Fajr. Surah Al-Sajdah. Surah Al-Sajdah and Surah Al-Insan.
Did Umar ibn Khattab used to recite Surah Yusuf or for every Fajr he had?
No.
No.
I don't know
I
about
heard
that.
something like that on my TV.
But the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ was that he would on Fridays, he would recite Surah Al-Sajda in the first rak'ah and Surah Al-Insan in the second rak'ah, right? And sometimes you see this, like if you go to the Masjid for Fajr on Friday, like in North America, like in the Middle East, sometimes you'll see it, right? North America, you see it less, but sometimes like it's trying to implement a part of the sunnah or whatever the case may be, or implementing it in some way, right? You'll see that the imam will either recite like sajda in 2 rak'ahs or insan in 2 rak'ahs, or sometimes even, both. Also, page 36. There's a specific time of a day on the day of Friday. There's a specific time of day on the day of Friday when our supplications are accepted. The Prophet ﷺ said, according to Abu Hurairah, إِنَّ فِي الْجُمُعَةِ لَسَاعَةً لَا يُوَافِقُهَا مُسْلِمٌ قَائِمٌ يُصَلِّي يَسْأَلُ اللَّهَ خَيْرًا إِلَّا أَعْطَاهُ إِيَّاهُ وقال بيده يقللها يزهدها. That the Prophet ﷺ, he said, as mentioned by Abu Hurairah, that there is a time on Friday at which no Muslim would stand and pray and beg from Allah what is good, but except that he would be given it. And he pointed with his hand that this time is short and narrow, right? What this exact timing is,
the last hour process.
Scholars have differed. No one has ever said anything with certainty, but there are different opinions. Some of the opinions are it is when the imam is climbing the minbar, like when the imam is getting up to give the khutbah. Others said it is the time between the 2 khutbahs, that short pause between the 2 khutbahs, right? The majority opinion is that it is the timing before Salatul Maghrib, right? Not specifically the hour before Maghrib, but some time span within that is shortly before Maghrib, right? So it's between Asr and Maghrib, but the time that is the most blessed is as it gets closer to Maghrib, right?
Is that because it's the end of Jumu'ah?
Huh?
Is that because that's the last bit of the Jumu'ah, the day of Jumu'ah, before it was Sabbath, which is...
It could be, right? It could be, but although I said this is the majority opinion, right? And this is what's practiced, obviously, right? If you're going to make dua, perhaps this is the best time to seek it out, right? But no one has ever said with certainty that this is the hour. This is the opinion of most scholars, that it is this time, right? But no one can ever say with certainty, because the Prophet ﷺ himself, he did not tell us when this is, right? And some scholars tried to derive the wisdom of this. They said that, when you don't know it, that perhaps you engage in more acts of worship, or that just like you don't know Laylatul Qadr with certainty, that you seek it out more. So just like that on the day of Friday, you're trying to do as much dua and seek as much forgiveness and just increasing your actions of worship as much as possible. Trying to... this is not making sense. Okay. Also, one of the highly recommended acts to do on Friday is to recite Surah Al-Kahf and to send salawat upon the Prophet ﷺ, specifically on Friday. Abdullah ibn Umar, he narrates from Abu Hurairah that the Prophet ﷺ said, people must cease to neglect their Friday prayer, or Allah will seal their hearts, and then they will be among the negligent, right? So basically, people have to stop neglecting the Friday prayer, or if they don't, Allah will seal their hearts, and then they will be considered among the negligent or the heedless. The heedless, you could say, is a better translation. And you see this, unfortunately, right? Obviously, not to look down upon anyone, and may Allah guide us and everyone else. But like in Jumu'ah, in Ramadan, right, there's an increased number of attendees. Like it's a significant increase usually, right? Like it's noticeable in all masajid. Like there's more people praying. So the question arises, what's going on outside of Ramadan, right? Why is it? Because Yes, obviously it's the month of Ramadan, people are trying to increase in their actions of worship, but at the end of the day, Jumu'ah is, I mean, I'm talking specifically on the men's side, right? Because that's who it's obligated upon, right? That what's going on, and it's still an obligation outside of Ramadan, right? And it's not something that there's any difference of opinion on, right? There's absolutely no difference of opinion on it, right? So its ruling, without a doubt, it is the most important and blessed day of the week. And because it's a blessed day and it's virtuous, it's important for Muslims to know the rules and regulations that are associated with it, so that a person can maximize the benefit and can derive, as much blessings from that day as possible. Its obligation is established in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, attending Friday prayer is an obligation upon every adult male. Right? Specifically, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Rawahul Jumu'ati, which means going to Jumu'ah. Rawahul Jumu'ati wajibun ala kulli muhtalimin. It is an obligation upon every single adult male. Who has to pray Jumu'ah? Who has to pray Jumu'ah? 1, Muslim. Okay, obvious. 2, male. Right? 3, adult. Right? 4, sane. 5, a resident. And number 6, they have the ability to attend. All of these make logical sense. These are the people that have to attend Jumu'ah. Right? Now, ability to attend, right, is more related to like physical ability. Like there's no sickness or weakness, right, or undue hardship, like due to health reasons, right? Najib, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I was asking about that. Number 6.
Okay, yeah, like basically, hey, I work at this time or something like that is not a valid excuse. I remember a brother came to me last year, and practicing brother, someone who prays Jummah all the time, and he said that, look, I have to go to Fresno for some training, and like the way this training is, it's 5 days a week, like whatever, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., like a very, very short break in between, and the location of this place, like it's really far from any masjid, right? And like basically I need to take this training to move on to the next level, right? Or just like whatever, to get certified or something, right? And he said, I'm going to have to take this training for 4 consecutive weeks. I got to take this training for 4 consecutive weeks. There's basically no way out.
What does he do?
He works at a, like it has to deal with like hospice care.
So now we know he did do the training.
So he was like, what do I do, right? I have to. He's like, I can take this training now, or I can take it in 2 years. Doesn't make a difference whether I take it now or I take it in 2 years. I'm gonna be in the same exact situation of that, like this Friday prayer thing. Like, what should I do? To just not take it and keep delaying? So my inclination was like, look, like this is an exception. You're gonna miss 4 Jumu'ahs here. It is what it is. Obviously, this is not something you want to do. This is just the kind of the situation you've ended up in, right? But it's specified that it's 4 weeks. It is this time period, and that's it, right? So I said that, look, I believe it's okay for you to attend this, and it's fine. And I was like, but I'll get back to you, right? So I was having a discussion with some of the 5th year students, inshallah, right? And one of them, well-intentioned, he was like, Sheikh, like Jummah is an obligation. I can't just like remove it like that. I was like, yeah, but this has to do with his sustenance and his wealth. Like, this is about basically him sustaining himself, right? And this is basically necessary, right? And it's not like we're giving him an open-ended, do it for as long as you live. It's very, very specific, right? So sure enough, I think Sheikh Jibreel happened to walk into the room, and I was like, Sheikh Jibreel, what's your opinion about this? He's like, yeah, no problem, like attend. Like, sorry, he doesn't have to attend, but it's specified. It's 4 weeks, right? So there are certain situations where a person would be excused from attending Salatul Jumu'ah, right? We're not just saying anything, right? Obviously, if you have like some type of final or some type of exam and it can be delayed, right? Then obviously you delay it or whatever the case may be. But if there's something that, for the, just the way the world works, obviously we don't live in a Muslim country, so they don't operate the same way we do, looking at the obligation of Friday, right? So if it was something like that, then it would be fine, right? The other one is, we mentioned the resident, right? The traveler does not technically have to pray Salatul Jummah. He can, right? But he doesn't have to attend Salatul Jummah.
So was that guy not a traveler?
He was not a traveler because he was going to be there for a month. So we'll talk about traveling, but he was going to like it was like near Fresno, but like still like past Fresno, and he was going to be there for a month. I forgot. But he's not considered a traveler.
Because I feel like there's one time I went to a friend's janazah. Come on, they're like, dude, what is it? It's near Fresno, not Fresno. It's like a little small town. Before Merced, like no one ever heard of it.
There's a whole bunch of small towns there.
There's like a little small masjid there.
Okay. Jayyid. When is Friday prayer valid? Sorry, going back to the conditions. Who has to pray, right? Those are basically the shurut, who's obligated upon. If any of these conditions aren't met, the person doesn't have to pray Friday prayer, and they would simply pray dhuhr as 4 units of prayer, right? Now, at the same time, this is technically who has to attend Jumu'ah, right? But this doesn't mean that women and children shouldn't come to Jumu'ah, and that's kind of you could say a gross misunderstanding, right? It just means that Jumu'ah is not an obligation upon them, right? As a matter of fact, it could be said that it actually encouraged for women and children to go to Salatul Jumu'ah for a number of different reasons, right? Because this is a time that the community gets together, so it's a sense of community. This is a time where people interact with one another. This is a time when bonds between people are strengthened or even made or formed for the part. It's perhaps the one time of the week that everyone will hear a reminder or be reminded to be a better person, or about something Islamically, right? About whether doing something that they've been neglecting or avoiding something that they've been doing that they shouldn't be doing, right? So it's an opportunity to establish relationships and strengthen relationships and build communities, right? And at the same time, it keeps families and community members connected to their faith, right? It's supposed to be like a recharge for their faith, right? So it is encouraged for women and children to go, right? To experience that, especially for children, right? To know that, hey, like this is something that we do, right? This is one of the sha'air of Islam, like one of the open rights of Islam, that this has to be established. Okay, when is the prayer time valid? When is the prayer time valid, right? According to the majority, the time for Friday prayer is the same as the time for dhuhr prayer. According to the majority, the time for Friday prayer is the same time as the time for dhuhr prayer. Means, what is the time for dhuhr prayer? Immediately after zawal. Zawal is when the sun is at its highest point. Not noon, but when the sun is at its highest point. Until the time when the shadow of an object is... Huh?
The same way? No.
So according to the Hanafis, twice the length.
No, but that's awesome.
That's the beginning of Asr, right? And it correlates with Dhuhr. The ending of Dhuhr is the beginning of Asr, right? So the time of Dhuhr, right, starts after midday, after Zawal, right? until, according to the Hanafis, the shadow of an object is twice its own length. According to the majority, they would say is
Same.
equal to its own length, right? And according to the Hanafis, Friday prayer is not valid before the prayer time and is invalidated by the expiration of the prayer time. Now, there is a Hanbali position, right, that says actually the timing of Jumu'ah is not the timing of Dhuhr. And the issue is not the ending, but the issue is rather the beginning. That they say it starts much, much earlier, a few hours before this.
That's why we have.
That's why, and this is the position that you see masajid sometimes in the when do they apply this? They apply this during this time usually, right? Or they'll apply, usually you'll find masajid that have, in the winter. No, not in the winter. In the summer, no?
It's in the summer.
It's in the summer because in the winter, Jumu'ah comes in, Dhuhr comes in early, right? It's usually we're not in winter in America, and you usually see this applied with masajid that have 2 Jumu'ahs, right? Because they're trying to, obviously, because for space issues and whatnot, right? They can't.
12:30.
Yeah, it's not a accommodation, it's a space accommodation, really, for those people.
But even then, you have to have a fiqh reason. I mean, it has to be valid, right? We can't have two prayers at the same time.
So we had that come up when we were in MSA, because
What? Sorry, what did you say?
We can't have the same prayer twice, right?
We can't have the same prayer twice.
We can use the same space.
So you're saying we can't have the same prayer. So what Corona is doing is wrong?
No, if we don't actually take a fiqh reason behind it, is what I'm saying.
What? Sorry.
I
No, I don't get it. No, I seriously don't get it.
you could do 2 Jumu'ahs. It's kind of like having like 5 different Jumu'ahs of Allah, like Jumu'ahs.
So there's a
Yeah, but you have to look at the fiqh, right? It's allowed. That's why you can do it.
So
It's not allowed.
there is a difference of opinion. There is a difference of opinion about a masjid establishing 2 Jumu'ahs. Okay, there is a difference of opinion about establishing 2 Jumu'ahs because it is kind of seen as a foreign concept, right? It was never done, like for example, it's not done in Muslim countries. It was never done during time. Everyone just gathered, right? It's time for Jumu'ah, right? You'd say it's more of a recent phenomenon,
Yeah.
right? And because it's a recent phenomenon, recent scholars have had to make ijtihad. Is it something? I would say most scholars generally allow it. There are still some people that are not fine with it, right? But most scholars generally allow it because they realize the reason that masajid are doing it is not because they're trying to give convenience to the people. Rather, it's the masajid themselves do not have the room, and bigger issue, the masajid don't have the parking, right? So that's why most scholars have allowed it, right? Finding no issue in it, right? And that's why you see masajid doing it. But going back to the position, we said that you find some masajid, right, establishing this position of taking the Hanbali position, right? So they can have 2 Jumu'ahs. Because if they were to take the later timing, then it becomes too late and so on and so forth, right? So they take the Hanbali position and they establish 2 Jumu'ahs like this, right? Which is
still crossing into the
which is another,
You're gonna still cross, like if you do the 2 Jumu'ahs, you still cross, like the second one will end up at.
The second one is fine. The second one is never the issue.
Doing it before.
The second one is never the issue. The first one is the one where there's a difference of opinion, right? But generally, like I said, masajid that do it, usually the first one ends up being when we're not in the winter, ends up being in that timing, right? But it's a Hanbali position. Yes.
So, I may have misheard, but is the Hanbali position allowing for Jumu'ah to be had at an earlier period, or is it having 2 Jumu'ahs?
No, the Hanbali position, like I said, the thing of 2 Jumu'ahs was something. It's a very recent phenomenon, right? But the Hanbali position specifically about when does the time of Jumu'ah enter, they say that Jumu'ah does not have the same timings as Dhuhr. The ending is the same, but they say the beginning is different, right?
The first time I came across that was when, you know, like when it comes, the day is short, like when you're at UC, like UC always has like 2 Jum'ahs. So like one for people that have class at 1 and one for people that have class back up at 2, 3. So like when the 12 o'clock khutbah ended up coming in before the Dhuhr Adhan, we got that, like when we asked the Shaykh, he was like, yeah, according to the Hanbali method. So he gave us that stance as to why we could do it before Dhuhr. So like the khutbah would lead into Dhuhr. And we'd pray like kind of like right on those Dhuhr.
And there are narrations from companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is the position that this is why the Hanbalis hold this position. There are narrations from some companions narrated in Sahih Muslim, where companions, they say they prayed Salatul Jum'ah with the Prophet ﷺ, and then they left, right? And like what they describe of them leaving after Salatul Jum'ah, like they say that as they're leaving, Zawal al-Shams is happening. The Zawal is happening, which is indicating that they prayed earlier, right? Obviously, the other scholars have different interpretations for these hadith, or perhaps they don't accept them. Other scholars, they interpret these hadith as it's going back to what did so certain these hadith are authentic, right? But it's so the scholars, they came and they tried to interpret what exactly are are they saying, right? So some of the scholars, they came and they said, and this is the majority, they said no, what the companions are saying is basically they're saying that they prayed Salatul Jumu'ah at Zawal al-Shams, like basically right at the beginning time, right? The Hanabila say no, it's very clear that they prayed before that, right? Difference of opinion that exists. Number 2, the congregation. A congregation is 3 men other than the imam. Congregation is 3 men other than the imam.
Is it specific for Jumu'ah? Because that's the same question I asked one time to you, and then you said no.
About what?
Congregation. Is this congregation only specific?
No, for Salatul Jumu'ah, right? Another opinion is 2 men other than the imam, and this is the opinion of Abu Yusuf and Muhammad al-Hasan al-Shaybani, right? Or the 2 main students of Imam Abu Hanifa. Right? The Prophet ﷺ never ever performed Jumu'ah without a congregation, right?
Whose opinion was 40?
The Hanbalis and the Shafi'is, they say that the minimum to establish Jumu'ah is 40 people. That you need 40 people to establish Salatul Jumu'ah. Right?
Shafi'i and Hanbali?
The Shafi'is and the Hanbalis. The sermon for Salatul Jumu'ah, it is a sermon that precedes the prayer, and it's delivered in the timing of Dhuhr, right? So once again, when we say that Jumu'ah's time starts with the timing of Dhuhr, right? It's not just the prayer has to be prayed in Dhuhr timing, but the sermon also is delivered during Dhuhr timing, right? Now, specifically, we said it is something that precedes the prayer because there are khutbahs that are given that come after the prayer. For example, what's an example of a prayer that has a khutbah after the prayer? Salatul Eid, right? That khutbah is after, right? But in Jumu'ah, the sermon is before. Now, the minimum obligation for a valid sermon is 1 tasbihah, which is saying Subhanallah, or 1 tahmidah, 1 hamdulillah, or 1 tahleela, saying La ilaha illallah. Like that would be the absolute bare requirement for a valid sermon, right? Now, it is sunnah, not mandatory. It is sunnah for the khatib to give 2 sermons with a sitting in between in a state of ritual purity while standing. Okay? Once again, we talked about just like the bare minimum, right? Let's say I don't know, you have a high school and, you know, they can't leave, or it's just going to take too much time to leave, so they want to establish Jum'ah on campus, right? They're like, okay, well, no one really can give a khutbah, or like, you know, what's going to happen here, right? So technically, right, someone could just get up, one of the students, right, as long as they know how to pray and make wudu, right, they just get up and say a few du'as, say subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, and that would be like the bare minimum. Does that make sense? Right? And that would be valid. Now, we said it is sunnah for the khatib to give 2 sermons and to sit in between in a state of ritual purity while standing. Maud looking like he gained some wild ideas. The sermon should contain one verse from the Quran, blessings upon the Prophet ﷺ, and an exhortation towards taqwa, basically reminding the believers to have taqwa. And that's generally what you find, right? You find that they start with praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You find that they recite those verses, whether all 3 of them, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatih, the verse from Ali Imran, the verse from Surah An-Nisa, and the verse from Surah Al-Ahzab, or even one of them would suffice. Blessings upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the khutbah usually consists of 2 sermons that are separated by a short sitting. Abdullah ibn Umar, he narrates, when the Prophet ﷺ delivered the Jum'ah khutbah, he did so standing, then he would sit, and then he would stand again for the second khutbah, as you do now, right? Now, these are the following things that should happen during the khutbah. Like, what are the basic ingredients of the khutbah? Number 1 is standing, right? The khatib should stand during both sermons, right? Obviously, if for some reason the imam cannot stand or whatever, that would be an exception, right? Number 2 is praise of Allah. Number 3, sending blessings upon the Prophet ﷺ. 4, recitation of 1 verse from the Quran. 5, a call to taqwa. Now 4 and 5 can kind of be together, right? And then 6, supplication for the believers. Things that are disliked. Things that are disliked to do during the khutbah. Right. Now this is once the imam has climbed the minbar, it is disliked according to the Hanafis to pray. Right? So like Tahiyyatul Masjid, when a person comes in, or the sunnah or whatever of coming in, right? According to the Hanafis, it is disliked. Not prohibited, but disliked. Other scholars, right, they said rather it is advisable, right, or recommended, right? Sometimes in the past it's been situations where the khatib tells a person to get up, stand up and pray, or the khatib tells a person to sit down, right, depending on which opinion the khatib takes. But the khatib should also realize that there's a difference of opinion, and right, not to oblige people to do what opinion he follows, right? But generally the Hanafis, they say it's disliked to pray and it's completely prohibited to speak.
So it's haram.
No. And everything that is prohibited during prayer is also prohibited during the khutbah. So for example, speaking, eating and drinking. With the exception, one exception would be like moving, like if, you know, like there's a space or there's a call for the believers to move forward, right? You would take that and make those excessive movements and move forward, right? Now the reason for that is because it is considered wajib to remain silent and listen to the khutbah. There is no replying to a greeting or even to a sneeze.
Okay.
There is no replying to a greeting or even to a sneeze. Obviously not to a cell phone or to a text or tweeting or Facebook. Right? I remember once I was sitting next to a brother. It's a few years ago, a number of years ago, and we were attending Jumu'ah. I didn't know the person, but first of all, it was a horrible Jumu'ah khutbah, right? It's a horrible. It's horrendous, right? But anyways, I guess.
In what way it's just boring?
I
Or the content sucked?
Did they just do the bare minimum?
I mean all of that. You know, Khatib was not, I would say,
Qualified.
qualified. Topic was God knows what. You know. But anyways, he was checking ESPN and it was that day. It was that exact day that LeBron James decided to go back to Cleveland. So I was just kind of like, you know, like I was like, dude, why is this guy like? I was like, oh. And I found out literally on his phone. I was like, oh, unintentionally. I was like, oh. Yeah, that's one way to find out, right? Any type of speech during the sermon. Any type of speech during the sermon is prohibitively disliked. Why does it say makruh tahriman? It should be makruh tahriman. Hold up. Yeah, any type of speech during the sermon is makruh tahriman, prohibitively disliked. Right? Ibn Abbas, he narrated, the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever speaks in Jumu'ah while the Imam is delivering the khutbah is like a donkey who is carrying books, and for those who tell him to be quiet, there is no reward for the Jumu'ah. So even like, you know, telling someone be quiet or something like that, right, is not something that is you're supposed to do, right? Now there are certain situations, right? Especially if there are people like in charge of the masjid that are running things that need to take care of something or something like that, right? There are situations where a person is allowed to speak to the khatib, right? Because what we're talking about is speaking to one another, right? But there are situations where a person is allowed to speak to the khatib, right? So for example, if someone needs to tell the khatib, can you ask the people to move forward, right? And the guy does an ishara and the khatib doesn't get it or doesn't see it or whatever, and the guy says, khatib, or you know, so and so, can you ask, sheikh, can you ask the people to go forward, right? So there are situations where speaking to the khatib, right, directly to the khatib would be fine, right? There was a situation at a masjid, there was a situation at, it was at Corona actually, it was at Corona a few months ago, right? I was giving khutbah, and a brother who's like runs things, he came in from the back door, and someone had passed out, something had happened, right? And he said, please, if there's a doctor, come outside, right? Something had happened. So I just kind of repeated what the brother said, right? Although he's made, so there are certain situations, right, where it's fine to speak but generally to speak to the khatib. For example, if the khatib is trying to messes up on a verse as he's quoting it, or he's trying to remember it and he can't, you speak directly to the khatib, right? Other situations would be like if the khatib makes, not says something that's wrong, but says something that's just egregious, like just like blatantly, flat out haram or wrong, right? In that situation, it would be fine to speak to the khatib, like in the khutbah, right? Other issues can be dealt with afterwards.
Sheikh, what about if...
Wait, Spitty. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he narrates that even if you ask your companion to be quiet on Friday while the Imam is delivering the sermon, you have in fact, like, فَقَدْ لَغَوْتَ, like you have talked irrelevant speech, right? He says specifically, إِذَا قُلْتَ لِصَاحِبِكَ أَنصِتْ, that if you say to your companion, be quiet, يوم الجمعة, on the day of Jumu'ah, وَالْإِمَامُ يَخْطُبْ, while the Imam is delivering the sermon, فَقَدْ لَغَوْتَ, then you have basically spoken speech that is like irrelevant or not needed. Okay, go ahead.
Sheikh, two questions. One, what if the Imam actually asks the audience a question we're allowed to answer, right?
If the Imam asks the audience a question, you're allowed to answer, assuming it's a question, not a rhetorical question. Sometimes in khatib, right? Sometimes the khatib might ask a rhetorical question, like, you know, like says, trying to get the congregation to pray in congregation at the masjid. Like, what's the last time you attended the masjid? It's like yesterday. Right? So if it's a question that actually the khatib wants an answer to, right? Not a rhetorical question.
The generally speaking sermons are not supposed to be interactive, right?
Huh?
Interactive, they're not
They're not supposed to be interactive. The point is not to be interactive, right?
Secondly, can you tell a chef, oh, it's time? Or you're not supposed to?
You can, like I said, you can speak to the khatib, right? There are situations of speaking to the khatib, right? These things should kind of be done beforehand, and the khatib should know. But if for some reason something like that happens, a person in charge could, if it was, they felt that going was way beyond its time and they needed to tell them. You can. So at MCA, Muslim Community Association, San Jose, Santa Clara, right? I've always heard about this, but then when I started giving khutbah there, I realized, oh my God, like this is real, right? So right in front, so you have the congregants, and right in front you have kind of like a pole, right? So when you start giving khutbah, literally you have a traffic light, I'm not joking, you have a traffic light. When you start speaking, it's green, okay? As you get closer to the ending of your time, it goes yellow, right? And as soon as the khutbah is supposed to end, it goes red.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
Because you don't see.
I mean, I go to the men's side.
Yeah, but it's in the front, right? Like if you're standing like where the imam gives khutbah, you'll see it. It's right, like literally right in front of you. Like if I'm giving khutbah right here, it's where you are.
That would
Right.
only be in San Jose. There's some software engineer out
Yeah.
there who's probably-
And it's not like something like it's been around for a while, right? But yeah, I remember the first time like I gave khutbah at MCA a few years ago. It was like green, and then it got yellow. I was like, oh shoot! I was like, I gotta do this before it gets red. I gotta wrap up because like I want to cross the light. Like I'm gonna get a ticket or something. Yes.
So, replying to somebody's salam is prohibitively disliked.
No.
So, for some reason, I feel like there's a large number of women who don't know this rule
Yeah.
of not talking. So, when, salam is like the lower end, people literally have full on like conversations in Jumu'ah. But, so is it better to just, like, when someone says salam to you, just like ignore them?
Good question. So first of all, realize that, like we just backtracking a bit, that the obligation of Friday prayer is upon men, right? Not upon women, but it's encouraged for women to go, right? And if someone were to talk, right? For example, women, right? It would without a doubt, right? Whether they be sinful or not, but it would without a doubt diminish their reward greatly, right? As opposed to, I understand, like a lot of people don't know, saying Salaam Alaikum, right? Now saying Salaam Alaikum, like let's say the khutbah has hypothetically started and two people are in the parking lot walking together, they say salam to each other, that's fine, right? But once they kind of get in that vicinity, I would say even before they enter the masjid, but they can hear the khatib speaking, to cease speaking, right? Sometimes you hear the khatib speaking before you actually enter the masjid. As for replying to salams, yes, you shouldn't reply to salams, right? And I completely get it. I mean, perhaps more for women, but even men do it. Even men do it. Right, like all the time, right? I would say in this case, like don't reply to it, right? If you're gonna reply, just kind of, head gesture, hand gesture.
So it's okay to do like a hand gesture and like.
Yeah, that would kind of, yeah. I would say you could suffice with that.
So two questions. One in regards to speaking, when the khatib issues like the.
But sorry. But without a doubt, there's always a fear, like, of, like you don't want to offend the person, right?
Exactly.
Right. So I would say, go with the head nod or the hand movement. And if you feel like the person is someone that might be offended or might have gotten offended, after Jummah, tell them, sorry, I just didn't want to speak. When the khutbah was going on.
Really cursing you for
Yeah.
When the khatib issues basically salawat al-Fatih, and some people do it out loud, is that not supposed to do that?
They can. It shouldn't be like excessively out loud.
But
Yeah, they can. Oh, they can.
And second, in regards to when the khutbah starts, and basically people showing up late. Like I've heard like the angels closing the books, and
So the obligation is fulfilled, right? If they miss, right? If they catch the prayer, the obligation has been fulfilled, right? But the closing of the books means that they've missed out on an immense reward. Right? They've missed out on immense reward, which is attached to listening to the khutbah, right? But the obligation would be fulfilled. Because, like, for example, if the closing of the books were to be basically meaning they don't catch Salatul Jum'ah, then they would have to pray 4, right? But we don't tell those people to pray 4 for Dhuhr. Rather, if they show up at the beginning of the Salah, they pray 2. Right? The Friday prayer itself, it is 2 units of prayer. In both of those units, the Imam reads out loud, and the Sunnah is to recite. So after reciting Surah Al-Fatiha in the first rak'ah, to recite Surah Al-A'la, Sabbih isma rabbika al-A'la, and then in the second rak'ah to recite Surah Al-Fatiha and to recite Surah Al-Ghashiyah, which is Hal ataka hadithul ghashiyah, right? Some sunan that are related to the prophetic practices of the day of Friday. Maz, you had a question?
Yeah. It's related to the number of people in a congregation. I've, like, in certain situations, like the khatib has already prayed before, or has already performed Salatul Jum'ah. He's giving the khutbah again. In that case, if there are just 3 other people in the crowd and they need to pray, someone else can one of the congregants lead the prayer, or is the number related to? Yeah, I guess that's my question. Sorry, was that like?
It happens that I mentioned everything Friday.
3 other people. You're saying there's 3 people that haven't prayed Jumu'ah,
Yeah.
right?
And there's a khatib that has already prayed Jumu'ah. So this rule right here related to the congregants, is that just for the congregation or also for the salah? Yes.
Yeah, it would be fine. It would be fine. But for the salah, according to the Hanafis, right, like it would have to be a different person leading the prayer.
Yes.
I think that's what he's saying.
So the rule is for the congregation or for the salah?
Huh?
Is the rule for the congregation only or for the salah?
No, for the congregation.
Okay.
Like it's connected.
Okay.
Like both.
Okay.
Both.
Alright,
Both.
that makes sense.
For the entire thing. But just to go back to that question of obviously where you have this situation where sometimes an imam like for example in places where there's 2 Jum'ahs, right? Sometimes the imam is asked to give both khutbahs, right? Now usually what they'll have most of the time is they'll have the imam lead one of the salahs and not the first salah or not the second salah, right? The reason they do that, now some places the imam will just lead both, right? Which is fine according to the Shafi'is, right? Because realize in one of them the imam is praying an obligation and the people behind him are praying their obligation. But when he leads it the second time, he's just praying an extra prayer and they're praying behind him an obligation, which according to the majority of scholars is not necessarily cool. According to the Shafis it's fine, right? But according to the majority it's not. So what masajid do is generally they have in the second Jum'ah, they'll have the same khatib, but for the salah they will have one of the congregants lead the prayer. Once again, this is more of a recent phenomenon, goes back to having 2 Jumu'ahs that is kind of specific to, I'd say, almost maybe Western countries, because of the issues of space and the issues of parking, right? Generally, khurujan an al-khilaf, like, or mura'atan al-khilaf, keeping the difference of opinion in mind, right? I would, say that, have someone else lead the second prayer, right? Fine, khatib gives both khutbahs, right? But have someone else lead the prayer. Okay, let's do this. Sunan, prophetic practices of the day of Friday, right? Number one. Actually, before that. Okay, yes, before that. You want to add this. According to the Hanafis, if you join the prayer late, Salatul Jummah, if you join the prayer late, you will still complete it as a Friday prayer as long as you join the prayer before salams. So you will still pray 2 rak'ahs as long as you caught the salam.
Oh, if you catch the salam, you only have to pray 2 rak'ahs?
No, other scholars say that if you miss the second ruku', like if you catch the imam after he's gotten back up from ruku', then you have missed Jumu'ah. You can enter with the imam, but you would end up praying 4. You would pray dhuhr, basically. Right? The Hanafis, they say that if you enter, as long as you enter before salams, then you would pray Salatul Jumu'ah.
This is Hanafi. The first one was Hanafi, the second one was?
I know that's the Hanbali position. I think it's also the Shafi'i position. Let's see. من أدرك الإيمان.
You said if you enter after the first ruku'?
Say it again.
Was that you would have to, for other things,
If you miss the second ruku', right? Like you get the imam when he stands up right from ruku', the second one, then you would pray Salatul Dhuhr. Look at Imam بعد الركوع. Let's see. No, and this is the madhab of the Jumhur al-Ulama. Like if you don't catch the second ruku', right, then according to the Malikis, the Shafi'is and the Hanbalis, you've missed Salatul Jumu'ah. You can join the prayer, right, but you would pray Salatul Dhuhr. Clear? So the Hanafis, they say that as long as you catch the imam before taslim, you're good, right? According to the rest, the Malikis, the Shafi'is, the Hanbalis, if you catch the imam after, whether he's in the final sitting or after the second ruku', then you've missed the second rak'ah. And the reason they specify the ruku', they say that the ruku' is caught. The catching of the ruku', right, is the determining factor whether you caught that rak'ah or not, right? Even like for the Hanafis in any other prayer, if you join a prayer, if you catch the ruku', you caught that rak'ah. If you don't catch that rak'ah, then you haven't caught. If you don't catch that ruku', you haven't caught the rak'ah, right? So the majority, they say in this case you haven't caught the rak'ah, right? So basically you're going to be making up the entire prayer, but you missed the second ruku', which means you missed the second rak'ah of Jummah. Therefore you have to pray dhuhr.
Unless you pray the next one, right?
If there's a second one. Or you can drive to somewhere where they have a second one in time. Which I guess in SoCal in some places might be possible. Sunnahs of Friday. 1. To perform ghusl or to perform wudu. Yani, like, meaning if you already have wudu, to renew your wudu. Like, not that it's sunnah to have wudu when you pray. No, rather like if you have wudu, to renew your wudu, right? But generally the recommendation here, or the sunnah here, is to perform ghusl, right? Some scholars, a minority, hold that it is actually obligatory to make ghusl on the day of Friday. Abdullah ibn Umar, he narrates, Prophet ﷺ said, anyone attending the Friday prayer should take a bath And Abu Hurairah also narrated the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever does wudu on Friday, then it is good, and whoever bathes, it is better. Right? Number 2, to wear one's best clothes and to apply fragrance. We talked about women applying fragrance early on, a few weeks ago. Yeah? Remember what we said? Yeah.
There's a difference between just smelling
Posing
clean and
yourself.
actually having like a more noticeable scent.
Yeah, right. There are certain scents that just give a person a sense of freshness and cleanness, right? And then there are certain scents that you could say are very, very.
They give you a headache.
No, give you a headache. They're like, are they meant to be kind of like to draw attention, to quote unquote even be, what's the word?
Never been a fan of perfume.
Huh?
Ostentatious.
Not ostentatious, but I guess for like women's perfume, maybe to be like, so like seducing or
I've never found any
Huh?
female perfume nice.
Attractive.
I don't know what it is.
attractive, noticeable, right? Right. There's a difference between the two, right? But to wear one's best clothes and to apply fragrance, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that every Muslim should take a bath on Friday and wear his best clothing, and if he has perfume, he should use it. Number 3, to recite Surah Al-Kahf, right? Prophet ﷺ said, whoever recited Surah Al-Kahf on Friday will have an illumination from one Jumu'ah to the next, right? And there are other narrations as well. And then number 4, to go early, right? Abu Hurairah, he narrates, the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever performs ghusl on Friday, like the ghusl of janaba, right? So it's the same ghusl that we described the person performed when they're in janaba, and then goes to the masjid, it is as if he has offered a camel, meaning in charity, right? Great reward. Whoever goes in the second hour, it is as if he has offered a cow, and whoever goes in the third hour, it is as if he has offered a ram, and whoever goes in the fourth hour, it is as if he has offered a hen, and whoever goes in the fifth hour, it is as if he has offered an egg. When the imam comes, the angels will be present to listen to the remembrance.
So it is about al-hadith, right? This one?
Yes, it's narrated in Sahih Bukhari.
Hours?
It's not, they don't use hours and 60 minutes, it's more as in time periods, right? Basically saying that earlier you go, the greater the reward will be. You won't know whether you earned exactly, specifically the camel or the cow or right? But once again, those are mentioned there to just kind of show you the immense amount of reward that can be attained. Like the price of a camel is not cheap, like it's pretty expensive, right? I think nowadays, like usually it's around sacrifice time, I want to say $1,500, right? Like on the low end for a camel, on the low end, very low end, $1,500, right?
In this class, I think we were checking, in America, it costs $20,000.
Yeah, in America probably. Yeah. I'm talking about camels in like Saudi Arabia on the low end to slaughter, right? On the low end. Like the minimum I want to say I heard is $1,500. How much here?
40,000.
Yeah, because they're rare here. Like they're much more rare here, obviously. Yeah. Who should lead Jumu'ah? Before even that, whoever's leading Jumu'ah should realize that being a khatib is an honor and it is a privilege, and it is more of a burden than it is a honor and privilege. Like the person has to realize that this privilege or this honor is coming with a great burden that is being placed upon them. And so it's a huge responsibility, because essentially the person in a way is representing the Prophet ﷺ, right? Any member is an extension of the member of the Prophet ﷺ, right? You are standing, or that person is standing as his representative, right? And they should feel that weight and that responsibility. This is not a position that a person should ask for or actively seek, right? The person should have enough knowledge that will allow the person to lead the prayer properly, right? Now, enough knowledge to lead the prayer properly also includes knowledge of tahara, purification, right? So it's not just knowledge of prayer, but it's also knowledge of purification. And then just generally, even within khatibs, those that are more knowledgeable should be given preference, right? Not necessarily those who speak better, but those who have more knowledge should be given preference. Obviously, it is preferred if the person can combine between knowledge and the ability to speak and relaying information as to have a more powerful effect. And realizing that the purpose of the khutbah is to remind the people, to call people to Allah, not to push the people away, to combine between giving the people hope and also targheeb and tarheeb, like giving them glad tidings but also reminding them to fear Allah, right? Generally not, making the Muslims feel like garbage, or just like having a khutbah where you just point out faults in Muslims and without any solutions, or practical khutbahs, right? Very, very practical khutbahs. I remember our next thing is how to lead Jum'ah. We'll continue with that tomorrow, inshallah. But I remember how to lead Jum'ah, and then how to lead Jum'ah, then Eid prayer, right? How to lead Jum'ah and then Eid prayer. Who should lead? I remember, subhanAllah. You go certain Muslim countries, and not that, I don't know, I'm not saying it doesn't happen here, but my experience in listening to khutbahs is obviously more there, but man, you hear some khutbahs, you're like, dude, what was going on, right? So for example, when you study the chapter of zakat, right? Zakat classically was taught specifically by teaching, like, if you have this many number of animals, like let's say you have this many camels, you have to give this type of animal as zakat. If you have this many animals, right, sheep, then you have to give this specific animal in zakat, and it's like specific. This is how many years it has to have reached, and this and that, right? So it's kind of like a chart, right? A zakat chart, like based on how many animals you have, right? So I remember attending a khutbah, and literally, like it was in Medina, and the khatib literally just, like it was as if he was reading the chart. Like it was a khutbah about zakat, right? And when he started, I was like, okay, he's gonna like remind people to give zakat, which is important, and like tie it back to purification of the wealth and purification of the soul and like the blessings, and like this is gonna be great, right? Okay. And he's just like the whole time he's just reading the chart, not reading the chart, but saying like, hey, if you have this many camels, okay. I started looking around, and I was like, am I attended a masjid like where they're all farmers or something? Like, and like, khalas, like the khutbah ended, and it was just like about animals. Like it was literally about animals. He didn't even talk about like the zakat on the wealth you have, like 2.5%. Isn't that? And I was like, yeah, like not in Masjid Nabawi, but like in another masjid. And we finished, and I was like so confused. I was like, what just went on, right? So I went to another brother who was an American, who was an older student, and I was like, bro, like I don't get it. Like I feel like someone just played a big practical joke on us right now, right? And he was like, yeah. He's like, I was like, bro, like are there farmers here? Because I go to this masjid on a weekly basis. Like I think these are all city dwellers. He's like, yeah, I don't know. He was like, I was waiting for like him to like tie it in somehow, and like the purification or something, but it was just and then generally like the khatib should try to their best to give the best khutbah possible, which you find common in many countries, right? People reading from a paper, right? Not that that's wrong or bad, but as a listener it gets very very difficult, right? I remember in Medina, you'd go and sometimes try to seek out certain masjids because they were known for having good khatibs on Fridays, and they were actually much harder to find, right? I remember listening to a khutbah in Medina at the masjid of the Islamic University of Medina, like the masjid on campus. It was the obligation of basically for men wearing your pants or whatever you're wearing above your ankles. Like the entire khutbah was about that. I was like, dude, like Like I was like, this is not an issue of faith. This is an issue of difference of opinion. Like, what is going on here? Like, it was an entire khutbah on that. I was like, what is going on here? And certain people were like really happy after. They're like, yeah, guys, like, what did you get? Like, what did you get out of it, right? I remember one khatib that we happened to find in a different masjid. I remember myself, Sheikh Jimmy, and a few other guys. We found this khatib and like we liked him. We heard him the first time and we liked him. We're like, man, this guy's good. We don't know who he was. We just liked him. And then we attended a few weeks later, same masjid. We liked him again. But during the second khutbah, we realized why we liked him the first time. Because he was blind. So he wasn't reading from anything. It was just like, he was just speaking because he couldn't read. So we were like, okay, whenever he gives khutbah, we got to go there, right? Because it's going to be straight from his heart, right? So just kind of keeping that in mind, anyone that's,
I heard, I wasn't there, but I heard someone had gone to a khutbah. This was right after New Zealand, and the khatib forgot to even mention anything about New Zealand. Like, this was the Friday after. That same day, actually.
No, it was the same day.
It was the same day.
No, it can't be the same day. It was the next day.
It was the same day for us. Like,
Yeah.
it was
Oh, yeah.
the
Okay.
first
Sure.
one, the same
Sure.
day. And so the khatib didn't even mention anything about New Zealand. And then he said that the whole khutbah was about one of those like numerical miracles in the Quran, like the number 19 or like something like crazy like that. The whole khutbah was just about that.
Good. I'm happy you brought that up. So, look, there does become an issue, and it's become an issue in our recent times of like people, quote unquote, and I'll tie it back to what Dalen said. People wanting the khutbah to be relevant, right? Now, first of all, just like I'll break it down. I'm not saying that New Zealand shouldn't have been mentioned, but I'll get to that because that's very specific, right? Not all issues that happen are similar because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the world, right? Like every week there's something, right? Whether Trump does something stupid or like something, there's always something going on, right? There's this push for the khutbahs to be relevant, and I get it, right? But the purpose is, what do we mean by relevancy? What do we mean exactly by relevancy? If you mean by relevancy that you give something that helps the people, like become better people, and you give them practical steps to do that, then I agree, the khutbah should be relevant. But if you mean that the khutbah has to be relevant, like you have to tie it into what's going on in the world that specific time, no, that's not the purpose of the khutbah. Right? The khutbah is not, and sometimes this becomes kind of a burden as a khatib. You feel like the community wants you to talk about recent events. And I get it because they want to develop what's the proper Islamic perspective, right, on this specific issue that's going on, which is important, right? If it's an issue like that and you feel like the community needs to be guided in the right direction because the media is pushing them in many different directions and you need to guide them in the right direction, that's understood. But like, for example, I've seen like people mention on Facebook like, oh, my khatib is so cool because he tied in the most recent movie that's coming out in theaters, whether it's Endgame or this and that, to his khutbah. Or like someone said, someone posted on Facebook like, I've seen this numerous times now. Whoever mentions, for example, when that movie, Black Panther came out, this brother came on Facebook, he was like, if the khatib at your masjid mentions, did you just ask her if she watched it? I have not watched it. I've not watched Endgame. But he was like, look, if your khatib at your masjid mentions Black Panther, the movie, or just in his khutbah, I'll donate to your masjid, right? So so people after I was like, dude, like the masjid don't need your money. Like, don't ever think the masjid needs you. You need the masjid. Like this is not what the khutbah was for. The khutbah is to remind people of Allah. Great. I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you can't do these things. At times, if you're speaking to like a college audience or a young audience, perhaps you have to. There's certain examples that you have to use, right? Perhaps that will resonate with them more, right? But the Jummah khutbah should not be like, hey, this is what has happened on CNN in the past week. Make sense, right? That being said, sometimes there are incidents or instances or tragic events that happen within the world that perhaps it would be very, very advisable, right, to mention in the khutbah, whether it is a khutbah about it or to mention it in passing, right? So, for example, if this brother, he gave whatever the scientific miracles or whatever, right? You know, look, my khutbah that week was kind of around the incident. It was, and I know most of the khatibs in North America that Friday, their khutbah was around it, and I actually see that as, you know, we can't say it has to be, right? But I see that as smart, because a lot of people are like, how do we digest this? How do we understand this? Like, should we be, you know, whatever. But if not, then at least in passing, like at the end of the khutbah, to say that we make dua for our brothers and sisters that were killed, and, you know, may Allah, those that are injured, may Allah, you know, give them relief and give them a complete cure, right? Without a doubt, there are certain instances. I remember one of the most strange, not like, there was a particular khatib, so it's like 2011, 2012, right? This is like when, you know, may Allah give them victory, but the people in Syria, that's when like there was a particular week where there was a lot of killing of innocent people and so on and so forth. So like, there was like a unanimous agreement, not in North America, but like in the world, like all khatibs somehow like talk about Syria, talk about what's going on, tell the believers to make dua for them, tell them, the believers, to support them financially, right? So for example, that Friday, I was still in Medina, but every khutbah in North America somehow talked about it, for the most part, whether by making dua or revolving the entire khutbah. Even in the Middle East, even in Saudi Arabia, right? So I remember me and my friends, we were like, whose khutbah are we going to go here today in Medina? So we chose a particular khatib, we're like, he's probably going to kill it, right? And we go to the khutbah, it was at Masjid Quba, right, in Medina, and we're like, dude's going to kill it, he's going to bring it, right? And he starts off the khutbah, he praises Allah, and we're all excited, right? And he starts with giving the tafsir of, in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is talking about the story of Musa with Bani Israel, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تَذْبَحُوا بَقَرَةً, that indeed Allah commands you to slaughter a cow, right? And as soon as he said, I was like, wow, this is going to be like, because this guy was known for a very tafsir, right? I was like, he's going to tie this to killing of cow and killing of people. It was just the story of Bani Israel and Musa, the killing of the cow. And we were livid afterwards. We're like, dude, we get it, the cow, but like there's people being sacrificed, right? I get it, he doesn't have to. Did he fulfill the obligations of the khutbah? Yes, right? Did he have to talk about that issue? No. But like, dude, like, come on. Like the entire world is speaking about it. Like scholars like from the world, they got together and they advised khutbah in the world to like, hey, mention Syria in your khutbah, like talk about the issue, right? And it was like, I'm not making fun of the ayah, but Inna Allah ya'murukum an tadhbahu baqarah. I was like, dude, like, are you serious right now? Right? So I was like, you know, like, dude, like, it's kind of biggest letdown. So I get it, right? Not mentioning, like, bro, like, that's us. You know, how could you not at least mention it in passing, right? So I agree with that, but at the same time, staying away from like, you know, this pressure that's put on khatib, or this expectation, like, hey, talk about, I don't know, this issue or this specific issue. That's not, the khutbah is not supposed to be, you know, hey, like this is news flash, right? It's supposed to be, hey, remind people to have taqwa, be better Muslims, your faith will be tested, stay away from haram, so on and so forth, right? We'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. That's the end of my rant. وصلى اللهم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
Sheikh, did you listen to Sheikh Dennis Khutbah that Friday?
Yes.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome.